Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast, LDS Discussions Edition. LDS Discussions is back after a long hiatus, thanks to the epic 20-part series with Matt Harris on his amazing book. Oh my gosh, my brain just...
Second class saints.
Thank you, Julie. Second class saints. Black Mormons and the struggle for racial equality. We took an LDS Discussions hiatus because that series was so epic. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Anyway, that series is done. And now we're back with the amazing LDS Discussion series where we dig into Mormon Church truth claims from a neutral and as objective as a position as we can, and help you decide for yourself what is true and not true about Mormon Church truth claims. Today, we have an exciting new news story that just broke over the weekend. It's changed. It's like making history and then rewriting history as we make new history. Right now, I think the current title is Mormon Church Rewrites Scripture's Introductions, or at least that's how it started. And now what does it evolve to, guys? What's the new headline? What's the latest?
Like the church backpedals or something like that?
Church turns introduction into explanatory note in app without telling anybody and makes news outlets pull articles for fun. That's what I'd call it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. We're here with Nemo, with Gerardo, and with Julia. And just let's jump right to the story as it was a few days ago. And we're going to play Julia's amazing video from Analyzing Mormonism, her TikTok. Because Julia, this video's got how many views?
Almost 50,000, and it was published on December 5th.
Yeah. So this will just give you guys a sense for what the story was about as it evolved.
If you've been following along in Mormonism, you'll know that the church recently updated the introduction to the Book of Mormon. You'll find the new introduction in the Book of Mormon app produced by the church. After reading it, I have a lot of questions about what is and isn't mentioned. Angel Moroni is mentioned, but not by name. Joseph Smith is not mentioned. Nephites and Lamanites are also not mentioned. And in general, there is no mention of Native Americans. The gold plates are not mentioned, and any form of translation is not mentioned. The Bible is also not mentioned, and neither are the 3 and 8 witnesses. Jerusalem, the Tower of Babel, the Jaredites, none of these are mentioned. And nowhere does it say that the Book of Mormon is the most correct of any book on earth. Overall, the promises contained for those who feel that the Book of Mormon is true are far less impressive than the old ones. The new one says simply that God will reveal the truth of the Book of Mormon in his own way and in his own time. And it says simply, may you find God on these pages. As far as what is mentioned, Jesus is mentioned 4 times, God is mentioned 7 times, Heavenly Father is mentioned 4 times, and the words you and your appeared 21 times, when it did not appear at all in the old introduction. So to those who are active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and even to those who aren't, what's happening here? Is the church trying to make the Book of Mormon more palatable for those who aren't members? And is this new introduction really honest and transparent?
Yeah, so that's a great introduction. Julia, we'll be covering this more. I put together a slide of like 3 questions that kind of echo Julia's. Is the Mormon Church trying to again rewrite history regarding the Book of Mormon's origins? And we're going to be kind of covering the history around that in today's episode, providing context. A second question is the Mormon Church trying to deceive members and or investigators by hiding information, at least, early on, as someone's investigating the church, investigating the Book of Mormon? Are they trying to deceive members and investigators by hiding information about Book of Mormon origins? And finally, is the Mormon Church, this is the fun one, is Mormon Church decision-making heavily influenced by ex-Mormon YouTubers and podcasters? So those are some of the questions. We've got a live audience today. We're live streaming. Of course, we have Nemo from Nemo the Mormon YouTube channel here. Hey, Nemo.
Hey.
What is that? What are you
Jamie
showing?
Dodger.
Is that your spirit animal, basically?
I don't.
It's their sacrament.
Yeah. It's my sacrament. Yeah. It's the body of Christ in a lovely shortbread and jam biscuit.
We have Gerardo. Hey, Gerardo. Thanks for joining us. And always Julia from Mormon Stories and also from Analyzing Mormonism.
Yep.
All right, we're back in the saddle. We wish Mike were with us. Mike isn't with us, but we're carrying on in the spirit of Mike. Dude, Nemo, you should have next to like Dan, the taper Dan, the taper, you should have something that represents Mike just kind of that pays homage, like a bag of Cheetos or Doritos or
Yes,
literally, like Doritos. You should have a bag of Doritos.
we'll work it out. Yeah.
Okay, just to pay homage to Mike. Anyway, Mike is right now in retirement, but we love Mike. LDS Discussions. For those who don't know, the LDS Discussions series is a series inspired by Mike. Go to ldsdiscussions.com. It's a website where Mike, as a convert to the church in a mixed faith marriage, discovered difficult things about the church that he was never told, did this amazing website where he broke down Mormon church truth claims. And then we did a 55 episode series with Mike, meticulously exploring Mormon church truth claims. And that's what the LDS Discussion series is. You can consume it individually and separately as a Spotify podcast called LDS Discussions, as an Apple podcast, or as a playlist on Mormon Stories podcast. It's best consumed sequentially. But I would say it's one of the most important things Mormon Stories podcast has ever done is the LDS Discussion series. Like literally last night, I was at a party and a guy was like weeping with tears in his eyes, thanking me, thanking us, thanking everyone for what the LDS Discussion series did for him in his life. So it's actually a very meaningful series. Check it out. It's best consumed in sequence. And now we've got episode, what were you saying, Julia? Is this 55 or
59?
59.
59.
We're up to 59. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing today. Thanks for the intro. And I want to give a shout out because this story in particular, as far as we know, was broken at least first by our own Bishop Nathan Hinckley. We've interviewed Nathan on Mormon Stories podcast. He was a bishop up until recently. And he broke the story on the Mormon Stories podcast Facebook group, about 5 days ago, where he basically says the Book of Mormon introduction has been changed again. So he published that post on the Mormon Stories podcast group. I think that's where Julia saw it. And
for sure.
Our bestie Rebecca Biblioteca followed that up with some comparisons of the new 2024 Book of Mormon introduction, comparing it to the 1981 version. So as always, we love to give credit where credit's due. Shout out to Nathan Hinckley. Shout out to Rebecca Biblioteca. And it was from there that Julia got the inspiration to do her video, which we've already showed you. Any other things we want to say by means of introduction before we kind of take people back to the history? Nemo.
You first. Oh, okay, right. I was just going to say that on the same day, on the 5th of December, that's Gerardo. On the same day, on the 5th of December, was when I scrapped the video that I had planned, that I'd sat working on all week, and went, well, this is a story. So then started scrambling to change my Sunday video. So the video that went out on Sunday that everyone saw was done in a time frame of a few days.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone was rushing to cover this story. So I was standing on the shoulders of Julia and others.
And Nathan and Rebecca.
Yeah.
And also part of this story is that the church apparently has changed, possibly backtracked all of this stuff we're talking about in between the time we scheduled this episode, like on Saturday morning, and today, now it's Monday morning, December 9th. It looks like the church might be backtracking possibly in response to all this activity. So we're here to break all this down. Gerardo, is there anything you or Julia want to say before we jump into the history? Gerardo?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. Julia, anything else you want to say?
I think we're going to cover it all. So.
Okay, well, let's just dive right in then. Let's go all the way back to 1981.
1981.
Who wants to start in 1981? Who wants to give us the history?
I'll do this one. So like Nemo, so I always thought the introduction was written by Bruce R. McConkie, but I don't think that's the case. He was certainly on the committee. So in an Ensign article published in 1981, it says the introduction, this old introduction now came from the Scriptures Publication Committee of the Quorum of the 12, which included Elder Thomas S. Monson, who was the chairman, Elder Boyd K. Packer, and Elder Bruce R. McConkie, with Brother W. James Mortimer serving as executive secretary. So it wasn't just Bruce R. McConkie, it was a conglomeration, or it was a group of men. And then I will say that in Second Class Saints, we talk about how Bruce R. McConkie was heavily part of this and you could see his racism in the text itself and in the headings and things like that. And they've since moved a lot of those. So like, that's just background. But yeah, so it was a committee of people that wrote this in 1981.
And my understanding is that, you know, for those of us who are old enough to remember the 60s and the 70s, the church had different versions of its scriptures. And if I'm remembering right, 81 was around the time where the church came out with the triple combination, where they did like a whole years or decades of like, let's really do the scriptures right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get good introductions, good chapter headings. Let's get them all together in like a triple or a quad. And I remember as a Mormon boy, around 81, 82, getting this new set of scriptures that the church had been working on for a long time, which was going to represent like the best scriptures that the Mormon church ever put out for its members. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah, if you go back to the slide,
article, we'll walk you through all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you go back to the slide, it says the title of that article is "The Church Publishes a New Triple Combination." So yeah, John, you're right on the money with that one.
Okay, so that's I'm just going by memory here.
And before that,
that's great.
This is what the Book of Mormon looked like for those listening. I've got up a 1970s edition of the Book of Mormon with a little Moroni on the front. And it didn't used to have an introduction. It had the origin of the Book of Mormon and an explanatory kind of thing there that then went on to the testimony of the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses.
And maybe Ron or Julie can find it. But there was also like a version of the Book of Mormon that was like sky blue and it had clouds.
Yeah, I have that one.
Moroni,
And it has.
There was another version that was like gold with like fake hieroglyphics on the cover.
Right.
Like we should, Julia, literally, we should put together a little slide showing the way the Book of Mormon has been represented on over time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's been, evolved over time. Okay.
Yeah.
So where do we go next, Julia?
Okay. So the next slide is the old introduction.
Okay.
And should we go over that to compare the new one?
So this was the 1981 introduction to the Book of Mormon.
Yes.
Yeah, let's read whatever we think is relevant.
This one that we're looking at the moment, just for clarity, is the 2006 update.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a good thing to point out.
Introduction.
Because changes were made, and we will talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the old introduction, like which one?
Yeah,
we don't have the old.
We have the entire old, might be with the changes.
Is that this one?
That's the beginning of the old one, and that's the original. So then if you read after that from the other one, it will be no different.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's just 2 changes made.
What should we read next? And let's read it slow enough so that people can get the. Is this where we go next, Julia?
Anybody had to learn this by heart and recite it on your missions? Because
I did not have to recite it.
No.
Did you have to, Gerardo?
Yeah.
Dang. Do you want to read it?
Eyes closed, Gerardo. Go on.
I mean, I learned it in Spanish. I served.
Oh, right.
Okay, so should we read this? Is this the first thing to read?
Yeah, I'll read this.
Because this is reflecting of the 1981. Yeah.
Okay,
So
go ahead, Nemo.
This is the brand new introduction from 1981, as it was then. The Book of Mormon is a volume of Holy Scripture comparable to the Bible. It is a record of God's dealings with the ancient inhabitants of the Americas and contains, as does the Bible, the fullness of the everlasting gospel. The book was written by many ancient prophets by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. Their words, written on gold plates, were quoted and abridged by a prophet historian named Mormon. The record gives an account of 2 great civilizations. One came from Jerusalem in 600 BC and afterwards separated into 2 nations, known as the Nephites and the Lamanites. The other came much earlier, when the Lord confounded the tongues at the Tower of Babel. This group is known as the Jaredites. After thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites, and they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians.
Okay, so obviously the most important part is the part that ends up getting changed, because those last few words, it's basically affirmatively asserting they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians, meaning Nephi and Lehi and Laman and Lemuel are the ancestors of all the American Indians, right? That's what the 1981 Book of Mormon was asserting. Is that the is that the important part about this introduction?
Well, also the first paragraph was changed as well.
Yeah, the
First.
phrase
as
"as does the Bible" was removed.
Yeah. So this is
slowly and clearly for our listeners. So someone explain that.
Well, we have a slide on it too.
Okay.
So as does the Bible was taken out.
Okay.
Do we want to jump to that slide? Because this
Yeah,
isn't the
jump to
full
that slide.
introduction. This is just the first couple paragraphs. Do we want to read the whole old one or
You pick.
or-
You go.
I don't know because it's like still there. I don't know if it's worth reading all of it.
Let's go through the changes. I'd say let's do it.
Just do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to pick up where on slide 7 where it shows them all? Do
Okay.
you want to pick up where Gerardo left off, Nemo?
Yeah, that's good. So essentially, what we're saying is in 2004, they got rid of the phrase "as does the Bible" from the opening of the introduction. Basically, that was getting rid of the idea that the Bible contains the fullness of the everlasting gospel. They were like, actually, no, it doesn't. And then in 2006, and this is the change most people think of, after thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites, and they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians. And that was changed to they were among the ancestors of the American Indians. And I'll let Gerardo and John talk about the significance of that change.
Yeah.
I did want to comment on the first change because I remember on my mission being always a little bit confused about the Book of Mormon having the fullness of the everlasting gospel and literally not containing anything that we were teaching as missionaries, not containing.
But you're saying the Book of Mormon though, not the Bible.
Sorry.
So neither of them contain the fullness of the gospel. So
Right. I mean, actually, when I was on my mission, I loved the Bible. I loved the New Testament, and it was really interesting to me that we were using the New Testament to talk about, the 3 degrees of heaven. We were using the New Testament to talk about baptisms for the death, and it's like, well, doesn't the Bible have all these things that the Book of Mormon doesn't have? And why are we saying that the Book of Mormon is the one that has the fullness of the everlasting gospel?
right.
We're having to use the Bible to prove that our doctrines are biblical.
That's a really good point.
But then we can't use the Book of Mormon because it's not there. That's just something we wanted to point out.
So the change isn't even accurate because it says and it contains the fullness of the gospel.
Yeah,
So it doesn't really though.
And the response then was like, well, it's because the everlasting gospel is faith, repentance, baptism, and receiving the Holy Ghost, and that's in the Book of Mormon. But
right. Well, it's in the Bible too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Why
Those
would
4 things.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
And so, and then the other part that I actually lived, y'all, where were y'all in 2002? Gerardo, how old are you in 2002?
7.
Julia, how old are you in 2002?
I was 12.
Nemo?
I was 5.
Okay. So I was much older. Anyway, so
How old, John? How old?
I've told you all.
Tell us. You have to say.
Tell us. How old were you?
How old were you?
I was born in 69. So someone do the math. 31, like 32,
33.
something like that. Yeah.
33.
Okay. So I've people know that I lost my faith around 2001, 2002, right? I say that a million times. I say that almost every episode. So why? So what happened was I was called as a seminary teacher in 2001. And so I started studying church history in depth. And during this time, history is getting made. And one of the things that I very much remember is this guy named Thomas Murphy. So here's an article that I pulled up from, this says December of 2002. This was after I was reading Fawn Brody. This was after I was starting to read books on church history. And it basically says anthropologist Thomas Murphy set out to test a key principle of the Mormon faith with the latest technology. He wondered, would DNA analysis show, as taught by the Book of Mormon, that many American Indians are descended from ancient Israelites? His finding negative, the result excommunication. In other words, this DNA research starts emerging, DNA technology started emerging. And so this guy who's also in Washington, so I'm in Seattle, Thomas Murphy's also in Washington. We've interviewed him on Mormon Stories. Basically, he just like, let's apply DNA analysis to figure out whether Native Americans in fact descend from Laman and Lemuel from Israel. And he finds out no. So what does the church do? They threaten him with excommunication. But then he calls the media, so they call off the excommunication. That's followed up by a book by someone else who we've had on Mormon Stories. His name is Dr. Simon Southerton. He comes out with a book in 2004 from Signature Books called Losing a Lost Tribe, where Bishop Simon Southerton notifies the world that, Native Americans are in fact not descendants of Israelis, and so the Book of Mormon has a problem, and that is what led to. And here's the article in the Deseret News: debate renewed with the change in the Book of Mormon introduction. That's probably not the right first discussion of it. We probably don't have our timeline quite perfect, but the point is these changes to the Book of Mormon introduction that we've now called out, they're not just coincidental. They're literally in response to the work of Thomas Murphy and to the work of Simon Southerton. And the church is like, we have a problem. We need to hurry and change the introduction to the Book of Mormon.
Well, and that goes...
Go ahead.
And that goes to your question about, is the Mormon Church decision making heavily influenced by ExMormon podcasters or just ex-Mormons in general?
Or scholars.
Your scholars. Yeah. That's
Because I think the position of the church's default position is, we didn't know, particularly right from the time of Joseph Smith, we didn't know who the mound builders were. We didn't know who the Native Americans really were. And as we learn more, I'm sure it will back up our view of what the world is. And what we're discovering, particularly as later science comes along, is that's not true at all. But even with the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, which was contemporary to Joseph Smith's lifetime, and with that making its way to America eventually, with the problems that causes for the Book of Abraham, we see time and time again that as people discover more about the world, and as we learn more about the world we live in, it becomes a bigger problem for the Book of Mormon. It doesn't actually affirm it. But the position of church apologists is very often, we'll wait for the archaeology to prove the book. But the problem is they have to change where that archaeology is then going to have to appear. Like they'll stick it in Central and South America instead, because the Hill Cumorah is a clean hill, for example. Right? So this is a problem time and time again, I guess, is that the church has to constantly pivot and react to new discoveries in the world of science and scholarship and study.
But also, it doesn't ever do it in a very honest way. It doesn't just come out and say, whoa, there's been DNA, research that challenges these core narratives that we've been teaching people for 200 years. So we're changing the introduction, and we'll let you all know why. We want to be as accurate as possible. What do? How do they approach these types of things?
They gaslight us.
By what?
It's always been this way. I don't know. They just change it without telling us.
Yeah, they subtly make the change, but they don't really announce it in a big way.
Yeah.
And they don't ever give a reason why, right?
Well, I went on my mission in 2000.
And they punish the persons who were responsible for helping to make the change. Right?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Gerardo? What were you going to say?
I went on my mission in 2013, and my scripture still had the old introduction. So even though the change was made maybe in some scriptures, or started to be made in 2006, even 7 years later, when I bought my scriptures to go on my mission, and I still have them, they still had the old introduction.
And did you buy a quad?
Same with mine. I went and bought a new one on my mission to reflect the new changes.
I'm sorry, no, not a quad. So Spanish versions didn't have a quad until pretty recently.
You had a triple.
We had a triple.
Because I think some of this was changes to Doubleday, the publishing house. I think we're publishing, so it's specific to their publication of the Book of Mormon.
I think that was 2000. Was that 2000?
But even the Book of Mormons that we were handing out to people, they had the old.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah. So unless you're getting one printed by Doubleday, that wasn't necessarily coming across in the print editions. And I just want to make a prophetic pronouncement here. This will be the only place you will see any sort of detailed coverage of this little incident, right? Because the church isn't going to come out and speak on this. They're not going to speak on, as we'll get to later, why it's jumped around places in the app and why it disappeared, and why LDS Living aren't going to say why that article went down. No one's actually going to talk about it. They're just going to stop and not say anything. To your point, John.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Mormonism Live or Mormonish will probably cover it, right?
But I'm talking about the ex-Mormon space or the post-Mormon space is the only place you're going to see coverage of it. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, okay, so back to the slides. We've got a slide from Fair. Gerardo or Julia, do y'all want to talk about, the role of apologetics historically? And how they tried to explain away. Yeah,
so Fair Latter-day Saints, it used to be Fair Mormon.
Yeah.
They are an apologetic independence supposedly independent arm of the church, and I said supposedly because we have been able to trace money going directly from the church to Fair Mormon, in in their public disclosures 990s. So anyway, so what their whole purpose, is come up with apologetic responses or faithful responses to hard questions about the church. And I thought this was pretty interesting, this article that they have on their website, which is asking the question, why did the church modify the introduction of the Book of Mormon from principles ancestors to among the ancestors? And it seems to give a pretty honest answer. And it says the church made the change in the wording to remove the assumption which inserted into the Book of Mormon introduction in the 1920s and not part of the original text, that all the inhabitants of the Americas were exclusive descendants of Lehi. I think they got the date wrong because this introduction was in the 80s. That's right. So
Right, the
Yep.
91.
like the years wrong there, but yeah, just basically saying that the change was made
The
to
assumption.
make to make the introduction compatible with current DNA evidence, and acknowledges the fact that Lehi's group likely intermingle with the native inhabitants of the Americans.
And then going back to our episodes that we did earlier about the about the woman and the kind of blackness, because like Joseph Smith, the prophet and the mouthpiece for God, said that all the Native Americans were Lamanites
and Pacific Islanders, right? Like
Right.
it was North, South, Central America,
Hagoths
Pacific
people.
Islanders, they're all Lamanites. And the church, that Joseph Smith knew that, all the early founders of the church knew that. And that's what prophet translators for 200 years taught everyone. Right?
Can we put that slide back up for a second? Because I think there's a couple of important things there that need speaking about.
Yeah.
First, I take exception to the word assumption, because that's essentially blaming the reader or blaming the members of the church. Like, well, you guys assumed wrong, so that's your fault, your problem. Which is a tactic apologists use all the time. It's like, well, you were just understanding it wrong. So, I'm sorry, you were teaching it to me that way.
Or they could be saying the bureaucrats at church headquarters made assumptions as if they weren't influenced by 2 centuries of prophecies and revelations.
Or being prophecies and revelators themselves.
Right.
Yeah. This had been the generally held belief from the time that the church was restored. Well, who was around at the time the church was restored? Joseph Smith, the man who codified more revelations from God than any other Mormon prophet since. They all got written down in D&C, throughout D&C. So if that belief was held from the time of Joseph, why do Fair get to say it's some sort of erroneous belief that's crept in? The whole point of the restoration of the church is that it's undoing all these problems that have crept into Christianity. So then how can there be a problem that's crept in from the moment it was restored?
Because the restoration needs a restoration. That's why we have Deborah Stuffer. Or the restoration, right?
Oh my gosh.
Makes no sense. To be like, oh yeah, from the time of the founding of this restorationist movement, an error had crept in. Well, then it wasn't really good restoration, was it? Sorry.
That's a good point. Yeah. So, so is there anything we want to say about this Desert News article other than what we've already said? This is
just that the church itself a year later would cover the story, and it was actually an interesting article. I didn't include the article there, but they do mention Thomas Murphy and Simon Southerton as kind of steering the pod about the DNA evidence, and then they quote mostly, and it sounds like they interview John Sorensen, who's kind of giving his apologetic spin as to why the Book of Mormon introduction was changed, but it was interesting that they're acknowledging that it is regarding the DNA debate in the publication.
And I'm going to be ham-fisted about this and just Simon Southerton, Bishop Simon Southerton was excommunicated for making the church aware about this problem. He was literally excommunicated. The church excommunicates the people that tell the truth and educate the church membership as they correct the lies or the harm the church tells. That I can't think of a more condemning aspect to a church culture than that. And Thomas Murphy was threatened with excommunication, and the only reason he wasn't excommunicated was because he threatened to involve the media. And I think the church considered this issue. You know, the Book of Mormon is considered what, the keystone of our religion. I think that's what it's called. In other words, if that stone falls, the entire religion collapses. And I literally think the church avoided excommunicating Thomas Murphy to avoid bringing too much visibility to this problem. I don't know, but
one more point. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
On that Fair Mormon slide again, if you just chuck that up real quick, there is a real smoking gun there that Fair Mormon admit to, and I think shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah,
and it's a question that I just want to leave people hanging in the air. It says, this change, so the 2006 change to the introduction, makes the Book of Mormon introduction compatible with current DNA evidence. Why was it not compatible before? Why have you had to change that in order for it to be compatible when that introduction was written by a committee of prophets, seers, and revelators? Just sit with that question, people. That's all you need to sit with.
Yeah.
Why was it not compatible?
And I'll actually add one more, and this is why the LDS discussion series is so important. Go back and start from the beginning, because what this little change to among, right? So let me go back. Let me go back and just show it really quickly. The change from "they are the principal ancestors of the American Indians" to "they are among the ancestors" is an attempt to shrink the bullseye, because it was unambiguous for 2 centuries, starting with Joseph Smith, that it was just simple. All Native Americans are descendants of either, Lehi, Laman, Lemuel, Nephi, or the tribes that came before. Who is that? I'm rusty.
The Jaredites, the
Jaredites, right?
Amalekites.
It was either descendants of Jaredites, which of course is tainted by the fact that the Tower of Babel never happened, right?
Oh, and the Jaredites were all wiped out.
Yeah, right. The Jaredites or the Nephites, basically, and Lamanites. So when the church changes, it's basically put into a corner where it has to shrink the target. And so it's what you see the church doing is moving from Joseph Smith's narrative, which was tip of North America to tip of South America, all Lamanites, to, well, actually, the Book of Mormon probably happened in this teeny tiny little area, probably in Guatemala, maybe a little bit in Mexico, but it was just all the Book of Mormon, because also the geography never lined up to begin with. So they have to make a teeny tiny area, and the Lamanites and Nephites, they all happen in this little place in Central America, and then somehow there's 2 Comoras. There's a hill Cumorah in Central America where the plates were buried, but somehow they got teleported to this other, hill Cumorah up in
Jasmine Rapley says he just walked. He just walked for ages.
with the 50-pound.
With the 50-pound plates, if Joseph can run 3 miles home with them, Moroni can schlep him up to a hill over a couple of months.
This is a big deal, right? Am I wrong? Like, this change alone was a really big deal,
right?
That the church kind of just got away with. Anyway,
yeah. Well, it also changes. It changes the Book of Mormon from, possible being able to prove it to now indistinguishable from a fraud.
Oh,
because how can you ever prove that this is true?
Right.
Yeah. And the reason why we're going back to this history is because, like, the Mormon Stories audience, 70% of the Mormon Stories audience turns over every 3 years. Like, in 3 years, 70% of our audience is brand new to these questions. And so we're going to everyone needs to be reminded every 3 years as to what our whole history is. Am I wrong?
That's good.
No, it's absolutely true. Okay, so now that you have all that context, let's actually bring up the story. Who wants to take us to the current story? Nemo. Okay,
do that a little bit.
Okay.
So and this was a late edition. So what people need to know is that the past 3 or 4 days has just been constant new things coming up when it comes to this story. So this is very much a live and developing story at the moment. But the BYU newspaper, the Daily Universe, talked about this in October. they covered this. And if you go to the next slide, John, so October 11th, 2024, if you go to the next slide, they make it clear that the app involved an update to the introduction. So the update modified the Book of Mormon's introduction in the app.
Wait, before we get started, do you mind if I say, so the app, so this is different. I have a slide on it later, but this is very different than the Gospel Library app.
Yeah.
And so the Book of Mormon app is specifically for specifically for missionaries to give to investigators. So it's very much for the world consumption, the world to figure out what we're all about. So this is happening not in the Gospel Library app, but in this one that's geared towards
very important.
investigators.
So the Book of Mormon app it's like the equivalent to the Book of Mormons that missionaries used to hand out, or the members used to hand out. It's basically read the Book of Mormon. Here's your first introduction to Mormonism. Get the Book of Mormon app and study it to know if it's true.
Right.
Guess who wrote that article, John?
Who? Anna Syriac.
No.
Who?
Our friend Easton from CES Letters.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
Written by Easton Hartzell.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Okay.
His first name's so Mormon that his last name is a technique the church uses to make people want to buy their stuff. So, like, it's a really Mormon name. Easton Hartzell. Anyway, right.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll read that next slide for you.
The Book of Mormon app pointed at investigators
Mm-hmm.
for the church.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. And Nemo, let's just read it.
Yeah, I'll read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints recently updated the Book of Mormon app, which is this very specific app, making its introductory material more user-friendly, which that's not what that's about. It's easier to click on, right?
Very poorly user-friendly. It's really hard to find out how to start reading the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. The updates modified the Book of Mormon's introduction in the app and added context to the witness statements and the testimony of Joseph Smith. But we're focused on the Book of Mormon introduction here. He then gives
Wait, did it add context or did it take away context? That's right.
I don't know. I haven't looked at it. But he said first
words. I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah. He said first published in 1981 with subsequent minor updates in 2003 and 2006. The rewritten introduction was reduced from 561 words to 235 words for the app.
So
and that is important to note.
We're removing words.
So many words.
This new introduction is so much shorter and more concise. Then they speak to John Hilton III, a BYU professor of ancient scriptures. He said he loves the new inviting and modern language and believes it's more reader friendly. Next slide, please.
It's all about reader friendly.
Yeah, user friendly.
Adding context by taking out 50% of the words. This is great. This is like George Orwell. Like
1984.
This is like
We were always at
war with the aphasia.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we need this slide actually. Let's just move on from that.
All right.
Yeah, there's nothing important there. So this one is interesting. So it's not necessarily new stuff that wasn't there before. It's better versions of the same stuff. That's a quote.
Wait, where? What?
Right at the top of this slide.
Oh, it's not necessarily new stuff.
John Hilton about it.
It's on the article.
Yeah, in the article. But the screenshot on the right.
New stuff that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Better versions of the same stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I mean, they thought through. They have to spin this, right? This is spin, right?
Oh my gosh.
So what you see here though is that's the app. You see it on the right. And pay attention. There's a section called "What is the Book of Mormon?" You'll see it. It's a little square down at the bottom. Just hold on to that. We'll come back to that later. But hold on to that. That already exists in the app as of October the 11th. Right? That is there. It's populated. It's got stuff in it. Okay. Next slide. We don't need any more.
This is good. Sorry. All right.
That's all right.
Next slide. Okay. Yeah. So what is
here? They are now showing what the new introduction is. Right, they've got it out in text on the right, and they're talking to Barbara Morgan Gardner, a professor of church history, saying that they're excited for those who aren't members of the church and for international church members. That's a quote there. But you can see here they've got a screenshot of it as the introduction. Okay. So it's very clear as of October, this was the new introduction to the Book of Mormon in the Book of Mormon app specifically. Okay, that's what we need to really hammer home here.
So this shows that the change got made.
Got made.
And this shows what the change was as
Right.
of October.
Right.
Okay, so
That's
this was a done deal.
Done deal.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's what.
Then LDS Living reported on it. in
Okay, what
December.
LDS Living? Who wants to tell our audience what
Go on,
LDS?
Julia.
Well, I don't know if I know specifically because I don't think it's owned by the church, but
It is
But,
owned
like,
indirectly by the church.
indirectly by the church. Okay, so they whatever the church wants them to publish, they publish. And I'm
Actually, I should say not indirectly. It is owned by the church.
It is owned by the church. Okay.
but through their for-profit arm.
Oh, okay.
That's their management.
Okay, so it is owned by the church. Okay, so
Kind of like
I don't know
Mormon
why.
Grazia. I don't know how else you describe it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
It
I
is,
think
it is owned by the church just as much as the church owns Desert News and Desert Book.
Oh, then yes.
It's at the same
Okay.
level.
KSL.
Okay.
KSL, right?
No, well, yeah, I believe KSL is a little bit more removed, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so I don't know why the Daily Universe Nemo. I don't know why that one didn't get as much traction as this one, but LDS Living probably because everyone
Well,
has this.
It's just for students of BYU.
Yeah.
So
Right.
LDS
Oh, that's
This
true.
comes direct to your inbox.
Okay, yeah. So this one was published on December 3rd of 2024.
This is what kicked off, like,
This is what kicked off. Yeah.
maybe Nathan,
Like
and
Nathan
Rebecca.
Hinckley, Rebecca Biblioteca. Yeah. Everyone.
Nathan's in the comments. We'll ask Nathan if he wants to share where he first learned about it. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
Julie.
Yeah. So they published this, and then we can go through it. I took some screenshots of it if you want to.
Okay,
'Cause
so
it's
the
not-
headline
it's-
says the headline.
Have you seen this new introduction to the Book of Mormon? And so, like, they are presenting it as the new introduction of the Book of Mormon. They
So
do
that's
specify.
crazy. That's crazy that it's gone now. We're December 9th. It's gone. But 6 days ago, it's like we want the whole world to know about this, right?
Right.
And it had been there since October.
Yes.
LDS
Right.
Living were like, oh, this thing that happened back in October? Come look at this.
Right. They do point out, and that you've got there's a picture of the person holding with the Book of Mormon app. So they are saying that it is in the app, which again is just for missionaries to give to investigators. It is not reflected in Gospel Library. People got mad at me for not including that in my video. But like, anyway, so this is what the world is seeing as the Book of Mormon, and they're introducing it as the new introduction. So I took a few screenshots. So if we go, yeah. So why an updated introduction?
Read it
The
slow.
chur-
Read it slow.
The church first published an introduction to the Book of Mormon in 1981, releasing minor updates in 2004 and 2006. So Easton got his dates wrong because it was 2004, not 3. This basic explanation shared background information for modern readers and was not featured in the original plates, of course. The revised version of the Book of Mormon app is 169 words shorter than the introduction that many members today are familiar with. So they're even comparing the two. They're not saying this one. They're like, it's like replacing the other one. That's what I was reading. It features more conversational phrases directed toward the reader, aligning closely with language and teaching principles from Preach My Gospel. It is very much the same wording or similar wording to Preach My Gospel, whereas the old one is not at all. Preach My Gospel is very like you-centered. It's like you're talking to the investigator, and that's very much what the new one is reflecting. The old one doesn't have the word you or your in it at all. So 169 is they're comparing the two. To me, it's like, oh, we're replacing the old one with this new one, even though it's just so far in that one app. So, and then there's another. If you go to the next slide.
Really quick, I just want to share Daisy May. Thanks for the super chat. She writes, LDS Living is a division of Deseret Book.
Perfect.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide. Thanks, Daisy May.
So they're quoting John Hilton III again, because I think they quoted him in the October, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So John Hilton III, professor of ancient scripture at BYU, Brigham Young University, believes this updated introduction will help more readers understand the purpose of the Book of Mormon and feel drawn to its message. He said, the whole point of reading the scriptures is to connect us to Jesus Christ.
Uh-huh.
The reality is that for some people, the language of the Book of Mormon is going to be really hard to understand. I really believe that as we help people understand what the Book of Mormon is about, that just makes people more likely to want to read the Book of Mormon.
This is crazy. Okay, can I just point out a couple things here? Number one, what is John Hilton III a professor of?
Ancient scripture.
Is the Book of Mormon ancient scripture? Like, is that ironic? that the whole question here is the Book of Mormon even ancient scripture? All evidence points to no. And so BYU has a professor of ancient scripture hawking the Book of Mormon as ancient scripture, when we all know it's actually modern fan fiction, most likely. So that's ironic, right? But then the whole point is to connect us to Jesus. Yeah, but what they're really saying is, don't pay attention to the history, right? This is an exercise in obscuring and deep sixing as much historical information as we can, so you won't get caught up in actually trying to think of it as ancient scripture. Just think about your relationship to Jesus. Don't worry about like the dates and the names and the details and the history, because that's just going to cause you problems. Am I wrong?
That's right. Yeah, and just I think LDS Discussions has done episodes on the Book of Mormon not being ancient text. I like to refer to like David Bokovoy and Dan McClellan, because like they talk about how certain parts of the Book of Mormon are not historical at all. Anyway, just those are some things to like look at if you question.
Nathan
that.
Hinckley's in the chat. I've started his comment. He's letting us know how he found out about it.
Oh yeah, I'm going to share that in just a second. The only other thing just about this quote is, I really believe that as we help people understand what the Book of Mormon is about, that it just makes people more likely to want to read it. What they're really doing is trying to hide more about what the Book of Mormon is about to make people want to read it.
Right.
Yeah, because are they putting their front foot forward saying the Book of Mormon is about two groups of people whose skin color was altered so that they would be recognizable from one another and to create hatred between the two groups, and they would eventually flip-flop until one group dies? Because that's what the Book of Mormon is about.
So what that last sentence really should say is, I really believe that as we obscure and hide what the Book of Mormon is really about, that more people will likely will want to read it.
It's about a deeply racist worldview explaining the habitation of the American continent.
Okay, really quickly, Nathan, thanks for chiming in. Nathan says the missionaries shared it with a friend who texted me about it. They said that it was updated about a month ago. So
missionaries, that's a good, So the missionaries are very aware because that's what they're sharing investigators.
And
I just want to using the app.
In business, the best way to understand the Mormon Church is as a business. And what do we know about marketing, right? You got a funnel. You want to funnel people in. And so you want the top of the funnel to be as broad and as easily acceptable as possible. And then as you get them hooked, you get them connected with missionaries, you get them going to church, you get them indoctrinated and loving the community, then you give them more information. But you want the top of the funnel to be as generic and as God and Jesus friendly as possible, and not obstructed by Joseph Smith and his polygamy and the weird translation stuff. And so isn't that, am I wrong? Is that
or just Joseph Smith at all? Because he doesn't get a mention in the new introduction at all. He's just removed from it entirely.
The angel gets a mention.
John Hilton shouldn't be a professor of ancient scripture. He should be a professor of marketing. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, not really.
I mean, it's really a professor of marketing. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay.
Yeah, so I just made this slide just to make it really clear, because people push back on me. They're like, no, it's not. And so it is reflecting. Well, no, it's not anymore. But it was reflected in the Book of Mormon app, not in the Gospel Library, and not in the printed text of what you find in the Book of Mormon. Yeah. So I just wanted to make that very clear.
You could literally just like have this like vertical and have it be a funnel, right?
Like this is what the world sees. This is what investigators see.
Top of the funnel. Let's not mention Joseph Smith. Let's leave out lots of details.
Right. All the details.
Get tripped up. They'll just get tripped up, right? Okay.
Right.
All right. Sorry.
So again, we're just beating a dead horse. Like the app is used specifically for missionaries, for investigators.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a little bit of history here, right? Because is it okay if I talk about this?
Yes, please.
Of course.
Okay. So we have to give a little bit more context for those of you who missed about 10 years ago, or 20 or 30. So once upon a time, there was a man named Daniel Peterson. It was so funny. I was asking Julia today, like Julie's like one of the leaders in 2024 in like helping educate Mormons about the history the churches hid from them. And I asked Julia, do you know who Daniel Peterson is? And Julia, what was your answer?
I don't know. Like I understood a little bit as you talked more.
You're like, wait, who? Like,
who is this?
Isn't it amazing that in like literally just 10 years,
right,
the church's arch apologist can recede into almost complete obscurity? One of the leaders in challenging the Mormon Church's truth claims, in Julia, doesn't even quite know who the dude is. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, before we talk about
Dan.
We'll thank Erin Himes for the super chat. She writes, grateful for Nathan Hinckley, Rebecca Biblioteca, and all of you for keeping nuanced members informed of important information that she won't get from church leaders. Sounds like Erin is an active member of the church, and she's thanking us for teaching her the stuff the church doesn't. The church is hiding from her, basically. All right. So just a quick history. Once upon a time, there was this hack of a scholar named Daniel Peterson, who professed to be a scholar of I don't know, ancient studies or whatever. He started with FARMS, the Foundation for Ancient Research in Mormonism, which then got converted to the Maxwell Institute. And his role as chief apologist for the church was to make up pseudo scholarship to try and make the church look credible when it wasn't, and when it had no standing as a credible, as the Book of Mormon had no credibility as an ancient document. And the best example of Daniel Peterson's schlocky scholarship is what, Nemo the Mormon?
Tapirs. Sorry, horses.
You got a point. What is that, Nemo?
That is a horse or a tapir, depends.
And what's the context?
Well, as in, horses did not exist in the time of the Book of Mormon events. They'd already gone extinct in North America by that time, and they wouldn't be brought back again until Columbus turned up. So they aren't there, but the Book of Mormon text mentions horses. So what could they possibly be? That odd-toed ungulate behind me, tapirs, the size of a small pony. And there's a video that I've done videos on, like reacting to and discussing, where Dan Peterson gets all high and mighty, and people that just don't understand anthropology don't realize it's actually a tapir. And he's so smarmy about it, but he's just presenting this idea that these things pull chariots. These small pony-like creatures. So I went and did a video recently where I went to a zoo. I got in the enclosure with a tapir and was like, this nonsense has to end. We just have to stop this stupid idea. And I spoke to the keeper and I was like, could you get one to pull a chariot? Could you ride one? Would it go to war for you? And he was like, no, they're scared by the wind, John. The tapir that I was with, the wind blew through the branches and it ran off. They are so unbelievably skittish and just not domesticatable, particularly in any way.
One of the favorite things I've ever seen on the Mormon internet, I think Jeremy Ruddles.
Oh my gosh!
Jeremy Ruddles put this together back in the day, but it's sort of it's an animated GIF where Native Americans are like going to battle, being pulled on chariots by tapirs. Right? I'm pretty sure Jeremy Ruddles helped create. Have y'all seen this?
I have not seen that
before.
That is so funny.
Isn't that amazing? Really, you can put that in the show notes.
I should totally put that in the show notes.
Anyway, this is just giving people an example, just one example of the absolutely lame apologetics that Daniel Peterson shepherded for several decades, right? And then one of my proudest moments on Mormon Stories is when I worked with others, including some in the Maxwell Institute, to get Daniel Peterson removed in 2012 from the Maxwell Institute. And that's one of the proudest achievements of my 20 years at Mormon Stories podcast. And that's a story for another time. But long story short is Daniel Peterson and Louis Midgley and Bill Hamblin and all these hack pseudo-scholar, John Sorensen, all these fake scholar, lame apologists finally were demoted by the Mormon Church. They mostly relied on ad hominem and on excommunicating people like Brent Metcalf and Simon Southerton and Thomas Murphy. And what happened was the church got a new leader for the Maxwell Institute after Daniel Peterson was dethroned. And the new leader of the Maxwell Institute eventually was a really nice bloke, as Nemo would say. His name was Spencer Fluhman. And so Spencer Fluhman was this young and up-and-coming Mormon historian who was a good historian, but he was also faithful, but he was also not into pseudoscience, not into lame-ass explanation, and he was not into ad hominem. Like, we all celebrated the promotion of Spencer Fluhman to replace the hack, lame, uncredible, unethical, ad hominist, relying Daniel Peterson. And by the way, as a side note, Spencer Fluhman was viewed as sort of like the spiritual son of Jeffrey R. Holland. So it was Jeffrey R. Holland who helped put Spencer Fluhman as the head of the Maxwell Institute. And it's known, for those who know Spencer, that Jeffrey Holland considered Spencer Fluhman to be like the spiritual son of Jeffrey R. Holland. So that's a bunch of history to then take us to 2018, where this really nice, thoughtful, courageous couple named Brooke Bonham Miller and Josh Miller came to me when I was at my old studios, my old Mormon Story studios back in 2018. And they wanted to tell me a story. And basically the story they told me was that Josh lost his faith. Brooke was freaking out about it. And for some reason, they had a contact with Spencer Fluhman. So they go to the Maxwell Institute in 2018, and they talk to Spencer Fluhman about all their questions and doubts about the church, and specifically about Book of Mormon historicity and about Book of Abraham historicity, etc. And they record the conversation with Spencer Fluhman, and then they share that recording with me. And so I'm like, whoa, what types of explanations is Spencer Fluhman giving to people behind the scenes if it's not lame-ass pseudoscience, hack, non-scholarly apologetics? And so what I thought I'd do is I would pull just a couple-minute clip from this interview, because it's a foreshadowing of what the church is actually doing now, kind of 6 years later. Should we roll that clip? Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
On the one hand, we're excommunicating Grant Palmer for trying to come up with a theory of how Joseph was using his eclecticism to create the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And yet Spencer Fluhman's now telling us all that Joseph is heavily influenced by whatever sources are around him, and he's heading the Maxwell Institute. So, like, which is it? Are you excommunicated for that, or are you now honored and supported and paid for saying things like that? It sends a real mixed message that the church has to account for. Either stop excommunicating Fawn Brody and Grant Palmer and Michael Quinn and
John
me
Delaney
and Jeremy Ronalds, right? Don't excommunicate us all, but then have a leader of the Maxwell Institute that's basically saying all the exact same things, but just in private, right?
Yeah, but right. And I think they're the same issues, same questions, same explanations. I think he's found a place that makes him comfortable with all of this. And there's lots of things that he gets down into, like how
We'll get there.
Okay. We can hold on that.
Well, what were you going to talk about? Which thing?
Oh, I was just going to say how he, after studying all of the contents from Brigham Young Journal Discourses.
Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get all that.
We're going to go more into that.
I like how he says aspire to eclecticism.
Inspired eclecticism.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I like how he says that, but because that kind of just defines it all, really. I mean, pulls from here, pulls from here, pulls from here, and voila, we got a finished product.
And I was really struck. He calls the Book of Mormon Joseph's grandest revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And to call it a revelation it's what we're doing with the Book of Abraham, right? It's not we have all been told. Joseph himself said, I'm a translator. I translate. I use the artifacts to translate. There's an old language and we're translating to a new language. He's calling it a translation. We're all taught it's a translation. We all believe it's a translation. Now we're changing the narrative to call it a revelation. So now the Book of Mormon is not a translation. It's a revelation.
And
Okay. So that was the narrative. For me, that may be old news to you guys. For me, that was big news at the time.
I mean, I think what we need to be spending more time on really is one, how great John's jumper and shirt game were in that video. It was just excellent, and also a moment to applaud the increase in production quality that Mormon Stories has undergone over the years. You guys don't know you were even born.
So really quickly, just to kind of like, whatever happened to Spencer Fluhman? Like, kind of a tragic story. I asked ChatGPT to tell me what happened to Spencer Fluhman, and this is what ChatGPT said based on the formal line. Spencer Fluhman stepped down as the executive director of BYU's Neil A. Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship in May of 2023 after serving from 2016. His decision was voluntary and attributed to personal and professional factors, including his desire to continue contributing to the university in other capacities. Fluhman expressed gratitude for his tenure, which included efforts to expand the Institute's scholarly influence, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, that's, ChatGPT sometimes, conveys the opposite of truth, because my understanding is Dan Peterson and his hacks and his cronies never stopped nipping at the heels of Spencer Fluhman, to the point where they just continually undermined him, challenged him, and worked against him, to the point where Jeffrey Holland himself ended up throwing his own spiritual son under the bus, basically pushed out Spencer Fluhman. And that golden era of what was called pastoral Mormon apologetics or neo-apologetics was completely mothballed, and Spencer Fluhman was basically unceremoniously thrown under the bus by his spiritual father, Jeffrey R. Holland. And Nemo, ironically, he
came running into my arms, John.
So here's a photo of we should have a big red X or a picture of Jeffrey Holland throwing his spiritual son under the bus. But here's a picture of Nemo and Spencer Fluhman. What the fetch are you doing with Spencer Fluhman?
Well, Spencer came to Oxford, which is where I go to church. We get all sorts of academics rocking through the ward and a lot of Americans. But Spencer Fluhman, I turned up one week. He'd arrived in the port and he was teaching Sunday school. So I thought, well, this is going to be fun. So and a great time was had by all with Spencer Fluhman as my Sunday school teacher on that day.
Wow.
That was a bit of a wild ride, but yeah, no, we got along. We would chat. I'd go to the sort of open theology sessions he'd do at Pembroke College, along with the Anglican minister, who's basically part of our ward at this point. Yeah, Spencer's a good guy. I like Spencer as a person. Really like him. He's a good guy.
Oh, he's great. He's so loved.
Yeah.
He's honest. He's smart. He's kind. And honestly, he was too honest, because once word got out about what he was telling people, then all the classic apologists were like, you got to get rid of this guy. The church is going to be doomed if we're actually honest, right? If we're actually honest with people and tell the truth, and try and then come up with new justifications for how the Book of Mormon can still be inspired, but not actually be an ancient record. Well, that won't be good. And so, the honest people get thrown out in this church. And so it's actually a tragic, sad story. And it's just so Mormon, just like when Ezra Taft Benson was becoming inconvenient with his John Bircher sort of teachings in the 60s. What happens? He gets exiled to Europe, right? He's literally sent to Europe by the quorum or by the first presidency, because he's an embarrassment in the United States. And I wouldn't say Spencer Fluhman was an embarrassment, but it's like, if he's sticking around, people are going to ask questions. Why were you removed? Why were you booted out by Jeffrey Holland? And so it's like, get him to Europe, right? Let's get him out of the mix. And I know he had some health issues that were also involved, but it's so Mormon to sort of get rid of the inconvenient person and put him somewhere else for a number of years so that people don't ask questions.
Yeah. Let him hang out with me instead.
All right. So we're laughing, but this is serious, sad stuff. So anyway, shout out to Spencer Fluhman. You did good work. You deserve to be treated better. You didn't deserve to be thrown under the bus by Jeffrey R. Holland.
Yep. Big love.
Rant over. So now we're back to Julia's video, right?
Yep. Yeah, okay. December 5th.
Okay.
And
go ahead. Take up the story from here.
Yeah, I just wanted to so I say this list in the video, but I'll just go over it again.
Okay. Yeah. So let's slow down. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are not mentioned in the new introduction, like we've been talking about. So like Moroni's name, it does mention the angel, but it doesn't mention him by name. It doesn't mention Joseph Smith. It doesn't mention the 3 or 8 witnesses. It doesn't even mention gold plates. It doesn't mention Nephites, Lamanites, Jaredites, or Native Americans of any kind. It doesn't mention Jerusalem or the Tower of Babel. It doesn't mention the Urim and Thummim or the seer stones in a hat, which the old one didn't anyway. It doesn't even mention the Bible. It doesn't say that the Book of Mormon is the most correct of any book on earth. like it's so the person, so Hilton or the third,
Yeah.
like he's saying, oh, this is like way clearer. Like, no, it's not. You're taking out all the historical
Mhm.
context, all of it. So this is,
Yeah.
And by the way, Julia, did you make this list, Julia?
I made this list. Yeah.
Okay, so yes or no, LDS discussions panelists, have we done episodes on LDS discussions about the problems with Moroni? Yes or no?
Yep.
How about the problems of Joseph Smith?
Yep.
Yes.
How about do we have episodes on the 3 and the 8 witnesses
Yep.
in
Yep.
LDS discussions? Have we done episodes on the golden plates?
Yep.
Yes.
Specifically, have we
Right.
done episodes on Nephites and Lamanites, and have we done episodes on the Jaredites and the problems with the Jaredites? Have we done episodes on the mound builder myth and the Native Americans?
Yes.
Have we literally done episodes on the Tower of Babel?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about did we talk about the translation and the seer stone and the Urim and Thummim?
Yep.
Yeah.
Have we talked about problems with the Holy Bible as they appear in the Book of Mormon?
Yes.
Like, is this like 100% batting average with what LDS discussions has been sharing with the world very successfully
Yes.
for the past couple of years?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I'm not saying that they're doing this in response to LDS discussions, and there's many scholars that Mike built upon, including Mormon Think, including Jeremy Runnels, including Brett Metcalf and Simon Southerton and
David Bockavoy.
and David Bockavoy, and there's Sunstone and Dialogue and Mormon History Association. Like, we all stand on the
The
shoulders.
Tanners.
Oh yes, Andrew
Yeah,
Tanner,
yeah.
like Utah Lighthouse Ministry. But like, this is this beautiful culmination of all of these people's efforts into the church. This is like, we've caught them in the act of responding to the obvious problems with the Mormon with Book of Mormon historicity that the internet has successfully brought shine a light upon, and that we've caught them in the act of retreating and obscuring the narrative in response to the evidence. Am I wrong?
No.
I mean, are we being narcissistic
Well,
by making a connection?
we've
Let me
caught
guess.
them. We've caught them in the act of doing this for now, but then it'll all change again in a few slides, John.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So anyway, thanks for making that list, Julia. That's a really good list.
Yeah.
What?
So I just wanted to point out that so at the very this used to be the case, and I took screenshots of it. So if you go to the very if on the contents page, if you go to the very bottom, it says appendix, and then it shows you the testimony of Joseph Smith, the witnesses, the overview of the Book of Mormon, which it talks about the Nephites and Lamanites, and so
They put it all at the back.
they put it all at the very back, just like it's still there, but it's at the very back. So I don't know where investigators are going to ever I guess when they're finished reading the Book of Mormon, they'll get to that point. But yeah, it's just at the very back. So those things were there, but they're at the very back.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically hiding the football, right?
Yeah.
They buried the lead.
Yeah, they buried the lead, right?
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
you'll get sucked in by other things, but not
Yeah.
distracted by the
Right.
by the
Not
problem
distracted by Joseph Smith or the gold plates or
or Urim and Thummim or
right.
Native Americans or the Tower
Right.
of Babel or all
Yep.
these things that have been proven false. Okay.
Right.
All right. So what's this? This is the actual new
So
introduction.
this is the actual new introduction. I do think we should read it.
Can we read it slowly
Yes.
and sarcastically?
You should read it, John.
You do it then, John.
Okay. This is the new introduction, everyone. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
God is your heavenly Father. He loves you, and there's so much he wants to teach you. He wants you to understand the purpose of your life. He wants to guide you back to his presence. Part of his plan for doing all this was to make this book available to you. Since the beginning of time, God has spoken to his children all over the world. Often they have recorded their experiences and God's messages to inspire future generations to choose good instead of evil and come to know their Father in heaven. Some of these records are lost to time. Others may be found. One such record was buried in a hillside in around AD 400 on the North American continent. Its location was revealed by an angel in 1823. It was translated into modern language by the gift and power of God. That record is the Book of Mormon. It's called the Book of Mormon because an ancient prophet named Mormon compiled centuries of writings from other prophets into one book. It is subtitled Another Testament of Jesus Christ because it bears powerful witness that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, who came to earth to suffer and die for the sins of the world, including yours. He wants to heal you of your sins, make you whole again, and prepare your for eternal life with your heavenly Father.
We
Okay, so
need to
one more
have
slide.
words about this. No. We can't go to the next slide just yet.
Oh, not yet.
We need to discuss what's just happened.
Okay.
I think we've all been transported to a Delin home, like family home evening, circa
temple.
sort of 2003. Yeah, that was interesting, John. Were you ever a primary teacher?
Yes,
Did you ever speak like that to primary children?
I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did.
Okay, sorry.
Okay,
carry
wait,
on.
it's not done yet, though.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not done.
No,
Okay.
we're not done. So one more slide.
Okay. Second slide. In this book, you will learn of faithful, courageous people who received light and knowledge from heaven. They believed in God. They had faith in Jesus Christ, even centuries before he was born. They made great sacrifices for their faith. They also made mistakes, but they obtained redemption from their sins, and they risked their lives to share the true doctrine of Jesus Christ with others, and then preserve his teachings for future generations, including you. Read the Book of Mormon with an open heart and mind, open mind and heart, as you pray to your Father in heaven and diligently seek him within the pages of the Book of Mormon. He will reveal the truth to you in his time and in his way. He directed the creation and preservation of this record to fulfill his holy purpose, and you are an important part of that purpose. May you find God in these pages and discover his messages to you.
Are we seeing the comments where people are saying you sound like Thomas S. Monson? John, can you wiggle your ears? Can we see that?
I'll try.
There you go.
You did it.
There you go.
Wiggle my ears. All right, y'all. So honestly, my diction aside, what do y'all think of this new introduction? What are your just cold reactions to it?
There's nothing there. Like there's nothing there.
Yeah, so let's go back to what's missing.
All the
Well,
new
also the
language.
Hill Cumorah is kind of missing. They don't say it by name.
Oh, right. So yeah, a hillside in around
hillside.
AD 400,
Does it even
somewhere on the North American continent. We don't know
it
where
doesn't say New
anymore.
York.
Don't know
Does it
where.
say-
Just somewhere.
Just somewhere. A hillside around
hillside.
North American continent. We don't even know where it is.
Did we cover Hill Cumorah in LDS discussions? Did we talk
Right.
about the Hill Cumorah?
Yes. So I should have added that to the list. The Hill Cumorah is not even talked about.
And
So you have
this
to
is
update the
where
list. Yeah.
I've
I
said
need to
kind of
add
in
that.
reaction to some stuff that's been said earlier that this is them leaving a door open, right, for so much apologetics. It was buried in a hillside, not necessarily the one that Joseph got it from, because the angel revealed its location, not where the hillside was, but where the plates were.
Oh,
So
that's a good point.
Do you know what I mean? There's so much space.
They're like
there for them
leaving
to
it
go,
open.
Right.
Oh,
They were
that's so
buried
true.
in one place, and then God took them and put them in another place, and Joseph was shown where to go to get those. Not necessarily the same hill.
Are they catering to the sorry, this is off topic. Are they catering to the
The
Mesoamerica
hemispheric
and
model. Yeah.
and the oh my gosh, Rod Meldrum
The Heartland
camp
model.
Heartland model. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's
seems like
whatever
they're
you want it
catering.
to be. They're making it so bland. It's like a choose your own adventure thing where it's just like, well, you work it out yourself, whatever you want. It's no longer about Joseph did this. This is a book about these people. It's like, nah, this is just a book about. It doesn't even say who the book's about anymore, other than like
Just these
some
people made mistakes. They followed God. You know,
Yeah.
they repented.
also
We don't
really
just
weird.
these random generic people.
I said in my video on Sunday that like it talks about how they had faith in Jesus Christ even centuries before he was born. Like that's a really weird thing to front up with. This like there's sort of Methodist Christians that existed hundreds of years before Christ was born. That's
The-
always been a weird thing about the Book of Mormon, and they're now
Mormonism.
fronting that. And
Yeah,
they're
that's
going, here you go. Right. Yeah. They
Because it's
believe
very
in Jesus.
anachronistic to
Really
have.
weird.
Yeah.
Not that they look
Yeah.
forward to the coming of a Messiah, because that was a common theme amongst Jews and people that existed before Christ. They were looking for a Messiah to come. Wasn't that? It's that they had faith in Jesus Christ specifically, someone who wasn't recognized as the Messiah contemporarily in his own time by the people that he turned up with in Jerusalem. They're going, no, these people had faith in Jesus Christ centuries before he was born. How? How were
Yeah.
they Christians pre-Christ?
Right.
Well,
And that's fronted up.
didn't God reveal the name of Jesus to either Nephi or Lehi or something like that?
Yeah, and he also
Nephi or
revealed when
Jacob?
he was going to turn up, but then they forgot when he was going to turn up later in the book.
Yeah.
Something to do with Joseph writing the beginning after he
Yeah.
wrote the end.
Yeah. Wait, I also, if you go back to the very end of the introduction, one thing that I noticed. So as a missionary, we really emphasize the beginning, or the very end of the introduction to our investigators, where it's
Yeah.
like their promises are really strong. Like if you read
It's
the Book of Mormon,
Moroni's promise.
right? Yeah, if you read the Book of Mormon, you will find out that it's true. That means that Jesus is the Christ, this church is true, and that Joseph Smith was the prophet of God. So those are really strong promises that we were giving to our investigators. Whereas here now, these promises are really watered down. He was like, read the Book of Mormon with an open mind, and like that God's going to give you the answer in his own time and way, like whatever that means. And also, may you find God on these pages. Like, what does that mean? That's like a really totally different,
Mhm.
like they're getting rid of all the promises and from my reading of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it had Moroni's promise in the old introduction.
Right.
And that's just gone. There's none of that here, where it's like, read with a sincere heart, with real intent, having faith in Christ, and you will know the truth of these things.
It
It's
reminds
like,
me of,
God might turn up in these pages.
right. It reminds me of some of the changes made. I can't quote them exactly, but I've made videos on the changes made for the Preach by Gospel, where they have changed that and they've taken those out. Where like, oh, we don't know when you'll find out if the Book of Mormon is true. Like, we don't know. So like they're lowering the promises that.
Whereas that
they're
used to be a thing you had to know before you would then get baptized and join the church.
Right. So
And
like,
is it a case that people aren't having that spiritual experience anymore? They're not able to manufacture or engender or encourage that spiritual experience in people, that they know the Book of Mormon is true, then they get baptized. So they're saying, right, well, you'll know at some point. So just join the church while you're finding out.
yeah, and like, may you find God? Like, not will you? Like, you will find God?
Like you
I don't
will.
know.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to me.
Gerardo, what's your cold reaction to this whole introduction?
Yeah, I think that was one of the parts that was the most interesting to me, the removing Moroni's promise from the introduction and just making it more broad, as like the answer is going to come in, it could come in any way. If your grandma got sick, that was at a hospital at the time the missionaries came and gave you the Book of Mormon, oh, that's the answer, that the Book of Mormon was true. Or like you don't even, like I think Nemo just said like, you don't even need to have an answer or distinguish the answer for you to get baptized, because he may come in his own way. So as soon as you think you're finding God in the pages of the Book of Mormon because he mentions the name of Jesus X amount of times, then that should be enough for you to be baptized.
Right.
That's really really interesting, and I think it really tackles with a problem that I had as a missionary, and I knew missionaries on my mission had, which was it was not very common for people to actually receive clear answers when they were praying to see if the Book of Mormon was true.
My faith crisis started when Moroni's promise didn't come true for me.
Right.
And I wanted it. I was faithful. I was righteous.
At what age?
I was
You
16.
probably-
I was 16. I read the book cover to cover. I was seminary president. I was all in. And I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get my witness. And I knelt down and I prayed and I didn't get a witness. And so then I got back in bed and then I was sad. And then I knelt down again and prayed and I didn't get a witness. And I never got a witness. And I just kept acting as if it were true.
Yeah.
But God literally never gave me the witness that I had been taught to believe I would receive.
Yeah, and that's the new narrative now, where it's like, oh, God's going to answer you eventually, John. Like, it doesn't have to be now.
In many
like,
ways. I also, this is not a problem that they've been trying to tackle for a while. Elder Christofferson, I think, gave a talk in General Conference a few years back where he talked about his experience going and praying about the Book of Mormon. And then he didn't get an answer. But then later, a thought came on his mind of like, oh, you've always known it's true. So that was your answer, because you've always known it's true, because that's what you've always been taught. And really watering down what it could be or what the answer should be. And that's what it seems that they're doing here as well.
Yeah.
And people are making jokes in the comment, like Trevanon is saying, see, John, you're another true believer. And I mean, yeah, maybe, but like, I didn't masturbate before I was married. I didn't have sex. I still haven't tried alcohol. I'm 55. Like, I was seminary president. I read the book cover to cover. Like, what else could I have done? Like, I was going to the temple, like, and I'm not alone. I mean, Mormon Stories, we're now 2,000 episodes in, and so many people had similar experiences where they never really got the witness that Moroni promised, that they were led to believe that there would be a burning in the bosom, that they would have a witness that it was true. And so instead, they reshifted their context to, well, I always knew it was true. or a testimony is gained by bearing it. So they're manipulated into just lying and telling the world they believe, and then you get positive affirmation from everybody that you bore such a strong witness, such that you start believing your own lies in effect, right?
Right.
And that's like psychology manipulation 101.
Yeah.
So what you could have done, John, is you could have tried to find God in the pages of the book, and you could have waited for God's own time and his own way to reveal the truth to you. The problem was Moroni's promise.
I'm still waiting. Here, let me be theatrical. Heavenly Father, I am still ready for the witness. Please let me know the book is true. Because if it's true, I've got some repenting to do. Right?
Yes, you do, John. Yes, you do.
Not so many, maybe just coffee, John.
Just coffee. Not very.
But remember, 1 cup of coffee
can keep
is
you
enough to keep you out of the celestial kingdom, John.
Oh, and bad words.
Yeah.
Bad words.
Swearing.
Yeah.
So another thing that I think worth mentioning that's going on here with Russell M. Nelson's ascent into the presidency of the church, one of his first actions was to condemn the use of the word Mormon, to condemn the identity as Mormons, and to call a self-identification as Mormons to be a victory for Satan, but also to grow the logo of, a rebranding of Mormonism where Jesus is made larger in the logo. And we've shifted away from our roots as a Joseph Smith-based church, and we've shifted to a more mainstream, vanilla, evangelical Protestant Christian church, where we're de-emphasizing our peculiarities and our history. And if you listen to missionaries now, it's like, I love my Lord and Savior Jesus. And Jesus has, they talk like my Baptist friends did in 1986.
Yeah, they're 5 minutes away from saying, by grace, I've already been saved.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love my Lord and Savior. That was never the way Mormons missionaries talked 30 or 40 years ago. Am I wrong?
No, even the temple is like that. Like Jesus is almost a character you could take out, but now they're like putting his picture up everywhere in the slides, and like they're just making it very Jesus centered.
But ironically, this new introduction to the Book of Mormon, as it was at this point in the story, that the only non-deity that is named in that entire introduction is Mormon. He still gets a shout out by name. He's the only non-deity mentioned. He's the only person that isn't Jesus.
They can't avoid him because his name's on the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have to say his name.
They have to say his name.
Yeah.
But
That's
even
a good point.
Moroni, who was made fun of in the Book of Mormon musical, right? They got rid of his name too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Wait, as that should be on the list. Because that should be on the list. Moroni.
Yeah. And so the old introduction talks about Moroni as a glorified, resurrected being. Yes. Right? That's what they talk about him as in the old introduction. Now he's just an angel.
Yeah, an angel.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to say about this?
Well, so to segue into the next slides, to me, the removal of all these historical things or seemingly historical, like the Nephites, the Lamanites, the Native Americans.
It's supposed
Historical thing.
Seemingly historical. So this makes me think of maybe they're trying to pull away from the Book of Mormon being historical at all. And so that's why I gathered these next quotes, is to show that I think that that's what's happening, is that they're trying to rebrand or to remove themselves from that, and to say that it's just a revelation rather than historical in any sense. So that's where those next slides are.
And just so people know, the church is never going to come out and say the Book of Mormon is not historical. What they're going to do is what they've been doing the past 5 to 10 years, which is the point of the book is it's not a history book. It's not a history textbook. The purpose of the book is to bring you closer to Christ, but not to get muddled down in the history, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Bednar said at the last conference, and he's been saying it for a little while now.
Okay, so should we play? Okay, so go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, so in Russell M. Nelson in 2016, he said, and this is an address to new mission presidents. So these are the men who are teaching these missionaries who teach these investigators. He said, there are some things the Book of Mormon is not, President Nelson said. It is not a textbook of history, although some history is found within its pages. It is not a definitive work on ancient American agriculture or politics. It is not a record of all former inhabitants of the Western Hemisphere, but only of particular groups of people.
That is like one of the most stunning things I've ever read as somebody who's 55 years old.
It's also such a lie.
Why, Nemo?
Well, because the Book of Mormon lists out its coinage,
Politics.
it lists out the animals, it lists out political feuds. Exactly. It lists out who kings were, judges versus kings.
Government, right?
Yes. Yeah. It literally does all that. In fact, I believe
generals, legions, like it's
right? Certain plates were for matters of spiritual importance, other plates were for matters of cultural importance, of the lifestyles of these people. It absolutely has made the claim since its inception to be a definitive work on ancient American agriculture and politics.
Well, this is Nelson, like he's inoculating the new mission presidents. He's lowering the bar. He's basically saying, don't expect too much of the Book of Mormon. It's not a textbook. It's just to get you closer to Christ.
Well, who said that it was a textbook? I don't think anyone ever, any critic or member of the church has ever claimed that the Book of Mormon is a textbook of history.
It's like a straw man, right? It's like a straw man that he's putting up there to then knock down, right?
Can I just vocalize his comment on screen real quick?
Yeah.
It says, and in the 51st year. That makes my argument for me right there.
Right. And then he's also the sentence where it says it is not a record of all former inhabitants. That it was that way in 1981, but then they changed it in 2006 because it's not all of them. It's
because Jeffrey R. Holland, I don't have the quote, but Jeffrey R. Holland has come out and essentially said that the land of North America was kept separate and away from any other nation. That when they got there, they were the first people to get there. They were alone. They were the only people there. I can find that quote for you.
The Book of Mormon text reflects that idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think we should really just put a fine point on this. Why is Russell M. Nelson making this point in 2016 and not in 2006 and not in 1996 and not in 1981 or 75, right? Why is he saying this in 2016? What happened in the 10 to 12 years leading up to 2016? Again, we stand on the shoulder of giants, but we've got BH, we've covered this on Mormon Stories, right? We've got BH Roberts in the secret Mormon meetings of 1922 telling all the general authorities that the Book of Mormon might not be historical. Go ahead, Nemo.
I've found the quote from Jeffrey R. Holland if you want it.
Okay, you're interrupting my rant, though.
No, you carry on with your rant. I'm just letting you know I've got it when you're ready.
Okay. You jump in when you think it's necessary. But we've got B.H. Roberts putting all church leaders on notice as early as 1922 that the Book of Mormon is not historical, and then he gets released and hidden, and then we've got Fawn Brody in 1945. Telling everyone through No Man Knows My History that it's not historical. And then we've got the Tanners emerging in the 60s, right? And then we've got Sunstone emerging in the 70s, and Dialogue and the Journal of Mormon History. And then we've got the September 6th and Brett Metcalf in the 80s and 90s. But none of that has the internet. So it's known in these really small groups of people, but not known church-wide. It's not until 2004, 2005, when the blogs come out. Well, Signature Books does its amazing books in the late 90s and early 2000s. Grant Palmer, Simon Southerton, Thomas Murphy, DNA evidence. And then all of a sudden the internet picks up on all the work of all those giants with blogs and then podcasts, and starts pulverizing Mormon consciousness with facts about Book of Mormon historicity, which culminates in the 2013, 2014, the Swedish Rescue, Mormon Stories, my excommunication, then Jeremy Runnels, the CES letter, his excommunication, again, Mormon Think, and all the other people that contributed. That all happens in 2013 and 2014 and 2015. The Gospel Topics essays, we forced them to come out with them by 2013, 2014. Can anybody deny that these are the reasons why Nelson's giving this quote in 2016 and not in 2006 or 1996 or 1981, right?
Yeah, that's why. And this is still 12 years after Simon Southerton publishes his book that makes it very clear that they are not the inhabitants. They're not the predominant ancestors, the primary descendants, or however it's phrased. I think this is a good time to bring it in, actually, because you talked about the Gospel Topics essays.
Yeah.
The Gospel Topics essays on DNA and the Book of Mormon says, the Book of Mormon itself, however, does not claim that the peoples it describes were either the predominant or the exclusive inhabitants of the lands they occupied. In fact, cultural and demographic clues in its text hint at the presence of other groups, right? We won't get into that for a moment, but you know who was claiming that they were the only inhabitants? That they were the predominant or exclusive inhabitants of the land they occupied? Jeffrey R. Holland in 1976. He said, in the Ensign, here's his quote, Holy Scripture records that after the waters had receded from off the face of this land, it became a choice land above all other lands, a chosen land of the Lord. Wherefore the Lord would have that all men should serve him who dwell upon the face thereof. That's Ether 13:2. Such a special place needed now to be kept apart from other regions, free from the indiscriminate traveler as well as the soldier of fortune. To guarantee such sanctity, the very surface of the earth was rent. In response to God's decree, the great continents separated and the ocean rushed in to surround them. The promised place was set apart. Without habitation, it waited for the fulfillment of God's special purpose. So Holland clearly thinks that they were the only people to go there, and therefore they are the only people that inhabited that land that then could have produced the Lamanites, etc., and so on and so on.
Right,
So
yeah.
who do we believe now? Because Holland was saying that in the 70s, but now the church, in response to DNA, has had to change it, which means that you've then got the prophet of the church now, but he wasn't the prophet of the church then, saying to mission presidents, oh yeah, no, guys, don't believe it. They weren't the only ones there.
Yeah,
That's what we were teaching.
DNA and the internet. I think the internet is a crucial dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little sidetrack there.
No, it's super important. This is really important to show, what's going on and to match it up with the timeline. And if that weren't enough, we've got another quote from Nelson in 2021.
Yeah. So
Go ahead, Julie.
I can just read it because I have to explain a little bit. So as shown on the Church News website, during a devotional given on October 17th of 2021, President Nelson said that the Book of Mormon is not a textbook. President Nelson said that the Book of Mormon is not a textbook. Any formal history textbook would give equivalent attention to all its component generations. The Book of Mormon does not do that. Instead, it further clarifies many Bible teachings while revealing new concepts and refuting many falsehoods, including the notion that Revelation ended with the Bible and that one can be saved by grace alone. But if you skip to the next slide, according to several sources, including an ExMormon Reddit post, a post on LDS Freedom Forum, and a post on New Order Mormon, the Church News website may have been edited. I don't know this for sure, but this is my hunch.
I think I actually saw, because I was involved in I was watching this when this happened.
Okay.
And I do remember it having changed.
I'm glad we have a first.
Gerardo confirmed.
Right. Okay. So According to the above sources, and then Gerardo, who had heard it, it originally said, President Nelson clarified that the Book of Mormon is not a history textbook. So rather than textbook, it's history textbook. Instead, it further defines many Bible teachings while revealing new concepts, and then it finishes the quote. So I just thought it was really interesting that they took out that part. They took out the history part, and like it just looks like he was admitting that it's not really historical, and then they removed that part. I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting.
Either way, to John's point, it's a straw man because no one's coming out and going,
Right.
the Book of Mormon is a history textbook. No one's saying that.
Right.
So he's almost fighting an argument that isn't there because it's a weak argument to fight. It's a textbook case of when you would use a straw man argument. You're like, okay, I need to push back on a criticism of the Book of Mormon, but I need to find a weak one that I can easily push back on that then seems to bolster up the historicity of the Book of Mormon.
Right.
It's like, it's not a textbook.
It was never a textbook.
Yeah.
Like, why would you expect it to be a textbook? It's not a textbook.
Like, no one said it was. You know what was a textbook? The Late War of 1812. But you know, we're talking about that.
Yeah, this is great. Okay. So if Nelson weren't enough, future Mormon prophet David A. Bednar, right?
Yeah, so David A. Bednar. So in a devotional given just 5 days after President Nelson's address to the new mission presidents, Elder Bednar made this statement: "The Book of Mormon is not a book of history. The Book of Mormon is a book about the future. It describes episodes in the lives of people thousands of years ago, but the writers of the record, and especially the compilers of the record, were inspired by the Lord to include these things that we would need for the world in which we live today." So I feel like that one was more specific, where he's like, it is not a book of history, but it itself says it is a book of history. Like in the 5th year of whatever was quoted, like all these things, they're very, very specifically a book of history. That's the whole reason. And then we're moving away from that. Like this one's more clear than the 2 Nelson quotes, but.
And then he says it again in 2024. Are we getting to that one?
Oh, I don't know that I included that one.
He said it in October General Conference. He said essentially the same thing that he said there. I put it in my video, but yeah.
In the most recent General Conference, is that what you're saying?
Most recent General Conference, he got up there and said the Book of Mormon is not primarily a history book, rather it's a book that looks to the future.
Oh my gosh, I should have added that one. So he says it again.
And it's just so textbook. Like, in a way, people like Spencer Fluhman are treated like Simon Southerton, because I'm sure Spencer Fluhman spent a lot of time laying the groundwork, talking to employees of church headquarters and even lower level general authorities, like, hey, listen, this internet thing is a problem. Book of Mormon historicity's on the ropes. I have an idea. We can start calling it a revelation, and we can start saying it was never a textbook. Like, I'm sure that Spencer Fluhman helped lay the groundwork such that Nelson and Bednar and others would eventually adopt this marketing spin, right? But what do they have to do to him for helping them correct their course? What is the church leader's pattern for anyone that actually corrects them and helps them get things more accurate? You have to punish them first. So they've got to kick Spencer Fluhman out of the Maxwell Institute, make him irrelevant, so that then they can adopt his recommendations and start misleading people through deceptive language. Am I wrong?
No, that's exactly what they do. They did it. The best example is they did it to Bishop. Right? They kicked him out. I don't know. That's not the right name. What's the right name? Protect Children.
Oh, Sam Young.
Sam Young. Sorry, I'm thinking of someone else.
Yeah,
Sam Young. Yeah.
Sam Young helps awaken them to punishing him to the abuse of children, excommunicate him, and then adopt his recommendations, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Kate Kelly and Ordained Women help elevate the concern about the women being inferior in the church. They punish Ordained Women and Kate Kelly and then adopt some of the recommendations, right? Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
That they keep doing that.
Indeed.
All right. So what's next, Julia?
Oh, I think I already talked about this. Yeah, this is just comparing the promises in the old and new introduction. It's just wild to me.
So this is lowering
the promises, lowering the expectations. He will reveal the truth eventually, and may you find God in these pages. It's not like you will, where it's the previous one is you will learn all of these things, we promise. So it's just taking away Moroni's promise, which is like the biggest part of the Book of Mormon. Because if you don't have that, you can't find out if the book is true. And so again, Gerardo, you kind of said, to me, this is saying this is indistinguishable from fraud. Like, you don't know, you won't know. The answer may come eventually. You may find God. It's just removing that. Like, this could just be all fake, and you won't know.
That sounds like affinity fraud.
Right.
Just trust me.
Right.
Your results results may vary.
We talk about the book talks a lot about Jesus, so you got to trust it.
Right.
I wonder if there are modern examples. You know how like people do word study analysis of general conference talks over time. I wonder if the referencing the Book of Mormon as the keystone of the religion, I wonder if the frequency of that phrase being used in general conference has declined in recent years.
Probably, because it's a catchphrase, just like covenant path and higher and holier ways and all these sorts of things, right? Those are the ones that are in vogue at the moment. Book of Mormon is the keystone of our religion is probably like an 80s one, maybe, or a 90s one.
And then I also wonder, Nemo, you probably tracked this. Is Joseph Smith's name being mentioned less and less in more recent general conferences?
He's certainly being quoted less and less. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And Jesus is probably having a comeback in Mormonism, or
yeah. Well, they say his name a lot, but they don't quote him. They quote Russell M. Nelson more.
Okay, so
genuinely quote Russell M. Nelson more,
or show his face.
Joseph's got a red down arrow.
Oh yeah.
Russell M. Nelson has a green up arrow.
Yeah.
And Jesus is kind of like a lateral.
He's stable. Yeah.
Stable. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So have we kind of made the point of what happened up until December 7th?
Yeah, I think so.
And it all went crazy.
So up until 2 days ago, the Book of Mormon app had this new introduction. It had been up for a couple months. Recently, LDS Living had talked about it, and it was the new change. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I get a text from Nemo. What happened? What? No, actually, then.
Yeah.
Then at I'll just show the slide.
Check the slides up, yeah.
Like I see Julia's TikTok that's got 50,000 views, and what do I say, Julia?
You're like, let's make an episode about this. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I was like, this seems like a really big deal, right?
Right.
So I'm like, Gerardo, make a thumbnail. And Gerardo's
so we're like getting all the slides.
At that point, I'm already slaving away to get my video out. Like, and John's like, we're doing a video.
Gerardo's like, it's the weekend. I'm busy. Like, I can't just make a thumbnail in the middle of a Saturday, right? Saturday morning. So it takes a little bit of time. But what happens, Gerardo and Julia?
Yeah, it all changes. Yeah, so we scheduled.
That was the original time.
Yeah, that was the original one, and we had scheduled it. We scheduled this episode that you're watching now. We just scheduled it December 7th it went live or went scheduled at 10:43
Saturday morning. 10:43 a.m. Gerardo's finally able to get a thumbnail up. He schedules the episode. I'm the worst boss ever, and we title it "Church Rewrites Scripture's Introduction." Thinking that we'll come in Monday morning and be able to point everybody to the app and point everybody to the LDS Living website, and we'll be able to have a discussion about the pages, right?
And like end the episode here, right? This is where the episode would have ended, right?
Should have ended, but no. What happens, Julia and Nemo and Gerardo?
Do you want me to run through it, Julia?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, right. So next slide, please, John.
Okay.
Then I find this out, right? So I break this bit of news that LDS Living's article, because I was editing away on a Sunday, right? Because I'd turned around my production timetable and I'd binned off the video that I was going to be doing. John sends the message in Slack. I'm like, oh, well, great. I'm already working on a video of this, so I'll be able to come in Monday knowing what's going on. I'll have all my talking points. And then I'm going to get a few more screenshots. So I go to the LDS Living article and it's gone, right? So it's disappeared at some point between at some point between Mormon Stories announcing that they're going to be doing an episode about this,
and Julia's video, and
well,
so
you called me
in that 24 hours,
and also Rebecca Biblioteca is posting the comparisons all over Facebook, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Weekly's discussion. I'm sure there's moles in the Mormon Stories podcast Facebook community that are seeing the discussions about this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we
Julia,
don't know, we don't know.
I called Julia. I was
Yep.
like, check this out. Make
Sunday
sure
morning.
it's not just me. And no, it's not just me. This page is no longer available. Same URL. We've checked. We've got the same URL. It's just gone. Which we'd already got the screenshots. So that's no drama. And
Thank you,
the internet
Julia.
never forgets.
Right.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank goodness for screenshots.
And it is on Internet Archive, so it's still there.
Right.
So
I
the
can put that in the
Wayback
show
Machine
notes.
has it.
Right.
Next slide, please, John.
What were you going to say? Something, Julia?
I'll just put those in the show notes so that you can see that they exist.
Okay. All right. So next slide.
So that's my video that then goes out later that day. So 1 p.m. Mountain Time on the
So
Sunday.
a few hours after it's gone. And yeah.
So, I'm asking the question, is the church still looking at this as a historical book anymore? Is it still true in that sense?
Nemo, Mormon Stories is coming after him. Nemo's coming after him, right?
Yeah. So I put this video out. And then
your video did come
my
out.
video goes out. Yeah.
Okay, so y'all can check that out too, because Nemo always does great work.
It's out. And then December the 8th, 2024, at some point in the afternoon, about 20 minutes after my video goes out, you can no longer find the introduction in the Book of Mormon app in the introduction section of the text. It's not there anymore. The old introduction's back.
So it can't just be an LDS Living glitch.
No.
Not a coincidence. They're removing it from the actual app. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, because now it's gone from the app.
This seems to imply that there's
brothers.
software developers who are working on a Sunday.
Oh. That's really funny.
Someone's breaking the Sabbath. But then next slide, please, John.
Okay, next slide.
Yeah. So here it is. It disappeared. So now you click on the Book of Mormon app. You go to introduction. And the introduction is just the old one. It's the 2006 version of the 1981 one penned by McConkey's group.
So there had to have been some like, oh shit, the ExMormon YouTube is coming unglued. We're going to get screwed here. We got to get down LDS Living and take this off the app. But isn't that like, I mean, it's possible that it's also, okay, let's just be honest. It's also possible that all of these changes had nothing to do with any of us, right? In theory?
Sure.
In theory.
Oh, the thing has been up for a couple months already. And then
You're right. And then like all this,
weekend?
I don't believe it. I think they're influenced.
It's possible though. It's possible.
Sure.
Just
Not probable.
Not
like,
probable.
okay, here's one example that maybe LDS Living's article caused other people in the church to notice the problem, and that independent of any of our activity, they kicked the ball off.
Sure.
Going to be a problem.
But then how did the student newspaper of the Lord's own university have it up for 2 months and no one from the church did anything about it?
I mean, maybe less people inside the church read the Daily Universe than LDS Living. I don't know.
Surely the church is monitoring what comes out of the student newspaper of its own university that it heavily controls to the point you can't wear shorts on campus, right? If swearing in the locker room of a football game goes against the honor code of that university, surely they're monitoring what's being said in the newspaper, no?
Well,
I mean,
of course.
I just don't want to be narcissistic or like,
no,
you know what I mean? Like overemphasize our importance, but it's fun to at least insert that possibility.
And on a serious note, the church will not give us the narrative of actually what happened here. So we get to say what we think happened. They're not going to come out and explain any of this.
Yeah. If they won't shape the narrative factually, then we'll just present some facts and let people draw their own conclusions.
Yep.
We will teach them correct principles and let them govern themselves. Right. So can we have the next slide, please, John?
So it's and I haven't confirmed this. So it's literally gone from the app.
Yeah. Well, no.
Next slide.
Okay. What is this again?
So it's disappeared from the introduction section
of the app.
Of the app. Yeah.
Wait, but hang on.
But hang on. Next slide, please.
But they had to have updated the app, right? They updated the app.
Well, yes, but not through you had to update it through the App Store. Just the next time you opened it, it was changed.
Right.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't fully removed.
It wasn't fully removed because it now exists in the What is the Book of Mormon section.
Okay.
That's when you click that,
right?
That's the old introduction right there that you can see in those two slides. Right? That's what that is. Now, the reason we've got this last slide is because the What is the Book of Mormon section, like I said earlier on in this show, remember that it exists. That is a screenshot that you're seeing here from the October the 11th article from the Daily Universe, which means the What is the Book of Mormon section existed in that app while the introduction was replaced, which means the question is, what was in the What is the Book of Mormon section that's now been turfed out to be replaced with the new introduction that was put there when the old introduction was put back?
I mean, there's a
You guys
chance they
follow?
could have both been the same.
They could have, but then
Maybe.
how was that unnoticed for 2 months?
True. And they did call it, they announced it in October as the new introduction.
Yes, exactly.
So it doesn't, I don't know.
So if anyone knows what was in that, yeah, so something else was removed, and it's what was in the What is the Book of Mormon section. So if anyone knows what that was, let us know.
Yeah. This is just we don't need to talk about this one because Nemo already did that. Yeah.
So I mean, what this comes back to, and I'm just going to ask for a poll right now of our viewers and listeners. I want you guys to put in the comments. Maybe we'll do a YouTube poll. We should do that. We should create in our YouTube community a poll and let people select which ones they think are true or none. So Nemo, Julia, and Gerardo, I'll let you all opine. I'll play post, and you guys.
What's the question, John?
First question: is the Mormon Church trying again to rewrite history regarding the Book of Origins? That's question one. Nemo, what's your answer there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they're trying to leave the door open for a less historical reading of the book in future, but I don't think at the moment they're trying to rewrite history necessarily.
Okay, Julia.
I think I'd agree with that because I don't know that they won't ever admit that it's not they're trying to do that. But I think they're, like you said, the funnel. They're trying to make it more palatable for people who aren't Mormon or
But
members
also
of the church.
kind of hide.
Yes,
the
like
inconvenience.
let's not bring up Joseph Smith right away. Let's not bring up the Urim and Thummim. We'll bring those up later, but they still believe them.
Okay, Gerardo. First question.
I mean, I think it depends on what you mean by history, but if we're trying to change the narrative as far as like what the Book of Mormon is and isn't, it seems clear based on the quotes that we showed from Nelson, Bednar, and others, the Book of they're trying to de-emphasize the historicity of the Book of Mormon. So and that's what also the new introduction seems to be doing. So in that sense, I think I would agree with the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And viewers and listeners, you guys can all vote. If you just have a one-line comment, like
there's a poll already on the comments. 87% of people.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't see the poll. Why can't I see? How do you see the poll?
I think you have to go to YouTube directly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there a way to share that on the screen?
StreamYard won't show it.
Oh, okay. So 80. Wait. So go say the stats again, Gerardo.
82% so far have said yes. 83.
That they are rewriting history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who put
Wow.
the poll up? Who put the
I
poll
put it.
up?
I pull it up.
Oh.
Wait, now I got to go look at it.
111 votes. 80.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Yep.
So if I show this screen right now, is that going to mess up the? Is that going to put us in?
Oh yeah, there you go.
A wormhole of
like this is the mirrors in the temple.
Just pause it.
I don't know.
So there it is.
84%.
It's streamception.
Wait, can you?
Oh, what happened?
Streamception.
It went down.
Who put
Wow.
the poll up? Who put the
I
poll
put it.
up?
I pull it up. I put it up.
Oh.
Wait, now are you gonna
111 votes. Video because there's
80.
a.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So we're at 84. It's at 84 versus
16.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the viewers and the listeners opining. Let's go to the next. Let's go ahead and go to the next question. Is the Mormon Church trying to deceive members and/or investigators by hiding inconvenient information about Book of Mormon origins? Nemo, Julie, you go first.
Julia.
I absolutely think they're trying to hide and deceive. Like they're not being honest. This is the whole focus of the Book of Mormon. It's for the Native Americans. That's the whole point it was written. It's Joseph Smith, the whole translation process. All of that's been removed. I think that they are trying to deceive. They're trying to make it more, like you said, the top of the funnel so that they can get people to read it, get people to commit. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Gerardo, do you want to go next, or are you busy? Do you want Nemo to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
I would say they're trying to be misleading. Yes.
Misleading.
About what the Book of Mormon really is, how it started. They don't want people to be looking at that or paying attention to that. You know,
Somewhere
now
on
it's
the
all about Jesus. Let's just concentrate about how many times Jesus is mentioned in the Book of Mormon. That's what's important, because no one really can fight against Jesus. And if that's the foundation of your testimony of the Book of Mormon, then, you know, who cares about whether it's factually true? If he teaches some good things about Jesus, that's fine.
All right, Nemo, you get the last word on this question.
Yeah, I think they are, but I think it's also nothing new. You know what I mean? This is the church. The way the church has operated since its beginning is keeping information from people. Some things are secret, some things are too sacred to
But this
share
feels
with
like
certain
really-
people. You know what I mean?
This feels like really heavy though, because this is the first introduction that investigators have, right?
Yeah, but I think it's given the way that it's. I'm not 100% convinced that the church is backpedaling here. I'm still holding space for the idea that this has all gone wrong somehow for them, and they've made a mistake. Because you said they got $250 billion, Julia, before we came on the show.
Yes.
But wealth is no indicator of competence, and the church is a massive example of that, just more broadly, right?
Okay, 'cause
They've
I think
got
that's-
all the money in the world, but it doesn't mean they're particularly competent when it comes to certain things.
Because I think that's an interesting talking point. Is this all just a mistake? Did someone just put it in the wrong place?
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah,
Because
and it
I
didn't
don't
get
think
flagged.
so.
They could
I
be.
don't think they did. And especially if they introduced it as the introduction. This is the new introduction, and this is the new introduction. And then like, oh shit. Oh, sorry.
So I held that position, Julia, like wholesale until I saw the Daily Universe article. And then I was like, so it went unnoticed for 2 months. Because if it had been that LDS Living put an article out about this new introduction to the Book of Mormon.
Freestyle featuring J. Cole.
Shush.
Yeah, I just noticed
Siri
now-
should start talking. Sorry, I'll just finish that thought off real quick. So essentially, yeah, if it just been LDS Living puts an article out about what was going on with this new introduction, and then the church goes, oh, hang on, that was put in the wrong place by the developers. Let's move it. It was meant to be the what is the Book of Mormon section. LDS Living, please take that article down because that's not actually what's happening here. There is no new introduction. Then that is plausible and, you know, sort of fine. But there's the fact that the Daily Universe article had it being called the new introduction for 2 months.
What you're saying, what was your final conclusion on that?
That was my final conclusion on that. And now the Daily Universe article has thrown that into some sort of grayness for me.
So you're leaving room for this is a mistake.
Yep.
Okay, I still don't agree, because like the church owns both of those things, and they are very particular on what goes in and out, or what goes out of
Although
it.
The church can be historically incompetent administratively and bureaucratically. I don't know.
They excommunicated me for a start. So there's some top tier incompetence right there.
Okay, really quickly, it looks like it's 95 to 5% people are saying that the church is trying to deceive. I really want the 5% to text right now, either in YouTube or Facebook, why you don't think this is deception. So I want to hear from the 5%. I also, don't y'all love this recursive Mormon temple effect mirror in the visual?
That's funny.
Like, I almost feel like I'm going to collapse down a wormhole.
It's the closest any of us apostates are getting to eternity anymore. So I think we should embrace it, you know?
Wait, I will say though, so in the section where this new introduction is now, where it's like, what is the Book of Mormon about or something? Like, this still isn't honest. Like, even if it was just published there, I still feel like that's not honest. And so, yeah, I would like to know those 5%. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, why do you disagree? Because, like, even if it was just that one section that published this, it's not being transparent.
What if somebody were to say, look, it's just marketing. It's a business. Everyone does it. Every 5 or 10 years, McDonald's changes its jingle. Burger King emphasizes chicken sandwiches instead of McNuggets. Like, businesses change marketing approaches, get new things that they emphasize. They emphasize new things. They de-emphasize others. There's nothing here. These are not the droids you're looking for. You're just making, like with the swearing thing in the BYU athletes, it must be a slow news day. Although I will say we have 1,400 people joining the live stream right now. Please subscribe and like this episode. Please donate to Mormon Stories, mormonstories.org. Please share and like this with everyone you can, by the way. But what about the argument that this is a slow news day and we're nitpicking something silly and unimportant?
I have thoughts.
I want to hear it.
The church does not want. No one that wants to support the church wants to be inviting comparisons between McDonald's and the church, because McDonald's is famously a real estate enterprise masquerading as a burger chain, and similarly, the church is a real estate exercise masquerading as a church. So they don't want to invite that upon themselves. Would be my first point. The second point is that McDonald's does not claim to be a restoration of the Lord's one true hamburger, and similarly, the church makes claims that means that it shouldn't be constantly updating. In fact, the fact that Jeffrey R. Holland ever sat down and said the world goes here and then we go here and then the world goes here and we go here, right? No, that's not right. That's not how the church should be working. From the viewpoint of its claims of being a restoration of the truth, right? From a pragmatic position of an institution that's trying to remain relevant within a changing world, then absolutely, yes, they should be doing that, and they should be doing it quicker and better, and to avoid doing harm to its members and all sorts of other things. But ultimately, based on the claims of a church that claims to be a restoration of the true Church of Christ, then they shouldn't be updating their branding in this way constantly. Because this isn't just branding. This is about the public-facing claims they are making about the origin of their sacred book of Scripture. This is not, oh, we've got rid of Moroni and now we've got Thorvaldson's Christus. That's a change in branding, even though Nelson said it's not rebranding, which is a really weird thing for him to get high and mighty about. Like, yes, it is just rebranding. You've changed your logo. Just accept it. But this is more than branding. This is what the church is choosing to, at least it was until it moved. It was what the church was choosing to put forward to its investigators. And that's the mask they chose to wear to the public, and that's dishonest. Final point there is it a slow news day? Yeah. But is it still really entertaining to talk about? Yes.
I actually think this is really important to talk about.
I do too.
Go ahead, Julia.
Why? I was just going to say, I served as a missionary. I served in Salt Lake. And we talked about the book, the introduction all the time. We read it to our investigators. It was really, really important. And so for them to do that, to change that, so that these missionaries are reading these to these investigators, they're like, everything's being watered down. You're not being honest. You're not being transparent. I feel like it's a big deal because people who are just now hearing about the church for the first time, they're not getting the right or the straight answer about what the church is. So I feel like it's a big deal. I don't know what else to say.
Now, Gerardo, you're the only actual Lamanite among us. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to talk about, for sure. I agree with Julia and Nemo.
Well, what if it's just, they're going to find out about Moroni and Joseph Smith and the Urim and Thummim as they read on and get more discussions, and as they read saints or whatever. Like, it's not like they're changing history. They're just, they're just keeping it more universal at the beginning. What's wrong with that?
I mean, isn't that kind of how Scientologists do it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. You start out with like self-improvement stuff, and then you find out about the Thetans and the,
Xenu.
Yeah. Once you pay more money, get more invested. And that's, a book that I'll never stop recommending is Recovering Agency by Luna Lindsay.
Corbin. Oh yeah.
Lifting the Veil of Mormon Mind Control. A classic cult technique is to have levels of information, and you only learn the deepest, most complicated aspects of the church or its doctrine or theology or history. Once you're already so far in, they've got their hooks into you, and you can't get out.
Yeah.
So, I'm answering my own question there. Do y'all agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, I think the introduction reflects a change to attitudes. So when in the 80s, when you were writing an introduction, you were able to make bold religious claims because you were working in still what was a fairly religious environment. People would more easily accept bold claims about Jesus Christ, about discovering the truthfulness of him. And it speaks in bold religious language. This new introduction, or now whatever you want to call it, this new body of text is far softer because I think it reflects a more secular world, that it's trying to say, if you are looking for meaning, if you're looking for purpose in your life, this is all about you, because it actually reflects a culture that's become more self-centered over the years. The new introduction is all about what Christ can do for you, whereas the old one was all about what Christ expected of you in order for you to get salvation, that he was the gatekeeper of, right? It's like, our church is the gatekeeper of salvation. Here's what you've got to do to get that and join us. Whereas it's like, well, here's what we can offer you to fill whatever void there may be in your life. I think it just speaks to the culture that it's kind of written for.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a poll on the final question.
We got 278 responses on the other one, 95% yes.
Okay.
Still 95. Okay.
And please, everybody, like this episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Our YouTube subscriber growth has dramatically slowed in the past year, and I don't know why that is, but if you guys will subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify or on Facebook, it just helps with our growth. So please subscribe, like, and donate. All right, last question. Gerardo's going to put this up for those of you following us on YouTube. I'll ask you first on this one, Nemo. Is Mormon Church...
No, ask Gerardo first.
Okay.
He
right.
goes first.
I'll do it slow because he may be typing. Is Mormon Church decision-making...
Can we have the old voice back, please, John?
Is Mormon Church decision-making heavily influenced by ExMormon Podcasters? This is the most self-serving, narcissistic question of all. Of course, we ask Gerardo.
If you have evidence, I don't know if it's narcissistic.
I say yes.
What? You think that we are the reason, like Nemo, Julia, Nathan Hinckley, Rebecca Biblioteca, Mormon Stories? You think we're the reason why the church took down the LDS Living article and changed the app?
Yes.
Like if Julia hadn't have done the TikTok video, again, if Nathan hadn't have mentioned this on Mormon Stories podcast community, if Rebecca hadn't have posted all over Facebook the comparison side by side, if Julia hadn't have made her TikTok video with 50,000 views, if we hadn't have scheduled that we were about to bitch slap them with this episode, if Nemo hadn't have done his video, you literally think it would have been like 5 days ago, Gerardo.
Yeah, I think the introduction would have remained.
The app is the same, and the LDS Living article is still up.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Julia.
I agree, and I'm really glad that Nemo posted the Daily Universe from October, and then all of it, then a month later or whatever, December 5th, it was all posted. December 3rd, it was all posted again, and then all this stuff happened. Nathan Hinckley, Rebecca Biblioteca, me, Mormon Stories, and then they just changed it. The timing just fits so well with that the church is influenced by ExMormon Podcasters.
And that's where I think it does hold space still for the idea that it was a mistake, in that they realized their mistake because they were monitoring the ExMormon community and saw us all pick up on it.
But the answer is still yes.
Yeah, the answer is still
influenced.
yes. Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
My point is the answer is yes, regardless of whether it was a mistake or whether they were like, oh, crap, these guys are absolutely taking us to town over this. Maybe we need to like abort. Regardless, it's because I think they saw the reaction just broadly online. They saw it get internet chatter. They saw it. And the internet chatter wasn't positive. It wasn't like, oh, look, this is a great, lovely new article, whatever. Because I didn't see any faithful members coming out and talking about it positively, particularly. And normally that is what you see. When there's a thing like this that's posted in LDS Living or something like that, you see the positive members coming out. Like with Heaven's Helpline, when that came out, when Murray's reporting from New Zealand came out, that podcast, all the members rushed to the comments to defend it. The church put things out to try and push back on it and whatever. Whenever these things kind of come out, the members are normally on board, but there was just no active members talking about this, which meant that this group controlled the narrative, and the church were like, well, that's not good, so I guess we better pull it. That's my thinking.
So just for devil's advocate and for fun, I'll bring back up the survey. And what the survey is not giving us, the survey is basically calling us narcissists, because the survey is saying 78% of our viewers think that the church is heavily influenced by us, and 22%, almost a full quarter, are saying that we're narcissistic, self-important piles of dung.
I don't know if that's what they're saying exactly. They're just saying no.
No, I like John's characterization. I think that's accurate. That's how I feel about myself most days.
No, but let's think about this. So, like, what we're potentially inferring is that there's like that there's basically people constantly monitoring the ExMormon community.
Which we know that's true.
I think we know that's true. But then, like, they're texting each other on a Friday or a night or Saturday morning. It's like, shit, Nathan said something, and now Rebecca. Oh shit, Julia did the TikTok. Oh no, Mormon Stories is now about to cover it. Oh, Nemo, we've got to fix this problem. Let's call the LDS Living people. LDS Living people, take that shit down. We're about to get just totally bitch slapped. Oh no, hey, gospel top, missionary app people, Book of Mormon app people, get that shit down before Monday and the Mormon Stories thing, and Nemo's about to drop his video. Like, that doesn't sound real.
But then don't take it down, move it to another part of the app so that we can try and convince people like Nemo, who's just too lovely and trusting, that, this is all just a big mistake.
I mean,
if it was nefarious, it'd be a clever play for them to just move it elsewhere in the app, because then they're not acting like they're ashamed of it, or they've had to delete it, or that they don't stand by it. It can just be played off as, well, this is in the wrong place. But they won't play it off at all. They just won't talk about it. I mean, this will never be spoken about by the church.
But it's kind of a Keystone Cops reaction, because, don't they know we screenshot stuff? And didn't they think about this 2 months ago before they ever published the stuff to begin with? No.
We know they don't think of stuff when they.
No, but if they're watching, if they've been watching us for years, which we're assuming that they do, eventually they're going to know how we think and how we're going to react to a change, right? Yeah. Isn't this kind of predictable? Wasn't this whole thing avoidable and pretty predictable?
Well, look at all the other changes that the church has made too. I mean, Second Class Saints with Matt Harris, he talks about how ex-Mormons or people, all scholars, they influence the changes in the church, and they could have predicted some of those things, but they didn't. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think they are always playing a game of sort of calculating what impact or how we will react or how we will respond, right? I know that personally, that is a calculation that's made when they do certain things. But the question is then, if they did this, having thought it through, why, when they got the reaction that I assume they would have expected, did they go, oh yeah, they maybe got a point, we should take this down?
Right, why did they remove it?
Because it's not like the church to bow in this kind of way to pressure. Normally they would come up with a different way of doing it, or they would leave it for a while or whatever, because they don't want to be seen as, they don't want us to be able to even make the claim that third question suggests, which is that we are in some way in control of what they do at all.
Yeah,
the whole playbook.
It's very possible they put it all back up and act like they didn't respond to us. Right? They've done that before too, right?
Well, we have the evidence that they did, that there is a response, or that they did take them down.
But they could just say, "Oh, there was a caching problem on their web servers."
Oh, okay.
Gerardo,
they got
bring sanity to all this, Gerardo, and you tell us what you think actually happened. Take us through your timeline of what you think happened. Yeah.
I think
you work in IT. You manage websites. You do graphic design, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it would be super hard to get the person at if this is something they were kind of doing as a pilot, which I think doing it just on the Book of Mormon app suggests it was just a pilot and trying to see what the reaction was. And then maybe, I think you're right, maybe they must have gotten some interesting feedback from members when the LDS Living article came out, and then added to that that we announced we were gonna do the episode. I think it was it just takes a call to the whoever is the head of the Book of Mormon app to just make the change. And it was literally just a text change, remove what was there and copy back the other the old introduction. Wouldn't take very long. And then calling the LDS Living people, telling them to remove
take that down.
But it is true, Nemo, that the Daily Universe, is that article still up on the Daily Universe? Okay, so that one has not been removed.
That'd be interesting if they take that down.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Sometimes a little bit more independent than.
Yeah,
it's still the student newspaper of the church's own university that's properly micromanaged by the brethren.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
holds the Nelson holds the purse strings.
Yeah.
Right, as quoted by Holland.
All right, so really quickly, a couple comments I'll share. If you guys find any comments you want to share, go ahead. JMT writes, "Don't get spooked, John, but I love the cussing." So there's a call for more John DeLynn cussing. Alyssa Gallion says, "Hit the like button, folks." I love that. JC says, "John, stop using the word narcissist regarding podcasters. Julia is most accurate here." What does they mean, Julia? That you're most
I don't know specifically. Like when you did ask the question, though, you're like, they're all telling us that we're narcissists and piles of dung. I don't think that's what they were saying. They're just saying that they disagreed with us.
Okay. Wingman says, "I can tell John would be hilarious and entertaining to hang out with off stream."
I've hung out with him off stream. Can confirm that's not the case.
That's not true, right? Right, Gerardo? I'm as boring as a wet sock, right?
No.
Right?
Nope.
Unless we're karaoke. Vocal Lips says, "Well, I'd suggest not screaming a future topic, but dropping it all in one day, no teasers." So do we screw up by like Gerardo? We always have this battle of, do we pre-advertise episodes? Did we? Well, actually, it's good because if we caused this fumble, part of the way we caused it was by pre-announcing our episode, right?
Yeah, while I was editing mine, thank you very much, I had to go back in and record something else to say, oh, by the way, at the time of editing this, they've got rid of the LDS Living article. The world's falling apart.
Nemo's like, "I should never have told John and Gerardo and Julia that the LDS Living article was taken back." Right? Maybe Nemo
That's
just
all good.
won't share with us what he learns anymore. Beck
Oh,
writes, "Thanks, Gerardo, Julia." This is a super chat. Thanks, Beck. She writes, "Thanks, Gerardo, John, Julia, Nemo, and the Mormon Stars podcast team. Keep up the good work." I think this is a great episode.
I like this.
I'm proud of it.
I've had fun.
Here's one. And I don't know if one of you guys banned David Cook, but David Cook was in the chats writing things like, "I know the church is on track. I know that the church answers all my questions. Never been hard to find out answers to anything." Wow. He must be 18 years old. All you have to do is ask.
David, are you in my ward? Because that sounds like my ward. But my ward's very rare. Like, well, I say my ward. I don't have a ward anymore. This is my first one since being excommunicated, guys. That's why I've been so spicy. It's been nice to see David in the chat, though. I mean, for me, like seeing an active member coming in and holding their own and standing up and saying, "No, I believe this, I believe that." Because even if we think he's wrong about saying all you have to do is ask, etc., I think the broader point of this episode is the church is no longer standing up and saying, "No, we believe this. If you ask, you will get this answer. This is what the Book of Mormon is." It was, 600 BC. It was the Jaredites. It was all these things. This is the church going, "Oh, let's make it more milquetoast and make it more palatable for people." And I think David's actually showing an example of what the church was like and what it's now failing to be, is actually standing up and knowing, we believe these things. This is actually what we believe. And fair play to him.
Maybe the most important comment at all to respond to. She Became Visible writes, "John, you're bringing back your depression beard. I love you with facial hair. This is not my depression beard. This is my victory beard. There's a difference."
What is the difference, John?
The last beard,
How he feels.
victory. The difference is victory. The last beard was my depression beard. This is my victory beard. I'm not going to say anything else about that. That's smart, Gerardo, to not say anything else about that. You approve that decision, Gerardo?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Closing comments. Let's go around the horn. Gerardo, you go first. Any closing comments you have to today's episode?
Closing comments. Just that this has been really fun and interesting to explore. I think the seeing how the church is going to keep either changing or rewriting the way they see and interact with the Book of Mormon is going to be really interesting. I think we're right on point as far as like the Book of Mormon the church is going to try to part ways from all the strange, weird history stuff and de-emphasize it and emphasize Jesus. That seems to be the pattern. And yeah, it will be really interesting what happens in the future. Also, something I was thinking this morning is the rapid growth of the church in Africa. I was reading an article from I can't remember if it was the Desert News or the Church News, But basically, what they're saying is that the church was considered, like this weird cult in Africa, and it's been in recent years when they started being more embraced by Africa's population. And I think it has a lot to do with this de-emphasizing of the history and Lamanites and Nephites and Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, and then just talking about Jesus and putting Jesus's picture in the logo, and then just passing off as any other Christian denomination, which has, contributed to the church's growth in Africa. I think a couple of years ago there was an article in the church's news talking about how the top 10 countries where the church is growing right now, they're all African countries. So we know that some of these countries are very heavily Christian. A lot of Christian denominations have had lots of success in those countries. So it's not it's not surprising that that's kind of what the church is trying to mimic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nemo. Thank you, Gerardo. Nemo, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, off the back of what Gerardo just said, I think it's interesting we're seeing the church shifting and becoming more like Hillsongy and evangelical. I mean, you've seen some of these concerts now that like the church is putting on for people, and you see like senior missionary couples waving their arms in the air, dancing, and it's trippy. Like that's a position that was actively rejected by the church when I was growing up. But they're changing, I think, to become more palatable to the places where they're seeing growth. Place they're not seeing growth, Scotland. The 2023 figures are in at the moment because the church has to report its official numbers to the UK government. So Scotland shrunk by 7% membership, and that's total membership. That's not actually who's active, who's not.
Oh.
There's ward closures incoming in Scotland very soon. There have been some already. Like the church is shrinking in Europe, it's shrinking in Britain particularly. So I think Gerardo's right that they're trying to be more palatable to the place where they are still growing.
Dude, the church is shrinking in Salt Lake City, right, Gerardo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gerardo, you were polling. You found out recently what about Kearns, which is a Salt Lake City suburb? What did you find out, Gerardo?
Yeah, yesterday three stakes were closed in
Kearns. This is like Oz shutting. You know what I mean? Like tomorrow.
Explain it to me like I'm British, John. What's Kearns?
It's a suburb of Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Like the church is shrinking in Salt Lake City, right?
Right. Yeah, five stakes were consolidated into 5 in past weeks.
Into 2?
Sorry,
5 into 2. Yeah.
5 into 2. Yes,
Yeah.
And in past weeks, members were getting text messages from their ward clerks telling them effective immediately. The text would read something like, "Effective immediately, you're all released from your callings. The word is no longer no more, and next Sunday you need to show up to this new
Oh my gosh.
this new word at this time." And
Dang.
and nobody, like there was sometimes there wouldn't even be word conference or anything to reorganize the word. They were just being told, okay, this is people from Kearns. Okay, this is the new word you need to show up at. And then this last Sunday was when, all the members from the 5 stakes show up to this special stake conference, and they're told, well, now there's no more 5 stakes in Kearns. There's only going to be 2. And this is actually interesting because it was just the Taylorsville temple, which is the temple that all these stakes would be assigned to, which is probably arguably one of the most beautiful temples that have been built in the Salt Lake County. And it must have cost so much money. It's right off I-15. Just the details of that temple are incredible. All the stakes are assigned to that temple. So
Dang. Holy cow.
the stakes that are being closed are of one of the most recent temples that has been dedicated in the area.
Well, similarly, Scotland's shrunk by 7%. They've just had a
And
temple.
Edinburgh.
announced.
Yeah,
Edinburgh's
yeah.
getting a temple.
Exactly. I was just about to say that.
They closed the Limerick district in Ireland and they turned it all into one stake, Dublin stake, and now they're getting a temple.
Oh my
Birmingham got a
gosh.
temple. And then they closed Litchfield Stake, which is right next to Birmingham Stake, to make Birmingham Stake bigger to try and make the temple serviceable. Like everywhere a stake closes, that's where a temple's going to end up, it seems. At this
And
point.
it's so ironic if you watch the documentary Going Clear on Scientology, it ends basically saying the Church of Scientology is shrinking in membership, it's dying in membership, but it's wealthier than ever, and it's just become a real estate holding company with a lot of empty buildings. And that's almost foreshadowing for what's happening to the Mormon Church in 2024.
If you want to learn about other people's experiences in the Salt Lake area, you can go to the Facebook Mormon Series Facebook. There was a post made yesterday about it, and then there's a bunch of people commenting about their stakes or their family stakes in the Salt Lake area that have either closed or words that have been merged in the last year or so.
Julie can put a link to that in the comments. There's also there's a subreddit on ExMormon Reddit called Mormon Shrivel. And people are always posting there the latest, closed ward or stake or mission in the church. We're talking about the church shrinking with giddiness and glee. I actually, if you talk to me when I'm not on a caffeinated rampage, I don't get glee from the church dying, but I do think it's important context for this whole discussion. Why is that? We really didn't put a fine point on this. Why is the church changing its introduction to its public-facing Book of Mormon? Because its truth claims are under increased scrutiny. Things that are Googleable, that cause serious problems, challenging the Book of Mormon's veracity, including Tower of Babel, Moroni, Urim and Thummim, Joseph Smith, Palmyra, etc., Cumorah. And so the church is desperately trying to stop the hemorrhaging of people leaving the church or not having any interest in joining the church. So they're playing with the Book of Mormon introduction to see if they can slow the hemorrhaging and or the death of its missionary efforts in the developed world. Am I wrong?
You're correct.
You are, I'd say, pretty much correct. I don't like to say 100% correct, John, because I don't want to inflate your ego, and I don't want to later regret the endorsement.
I love it. Okay, Julia, did we give you a chance to give your final thoughts?
No, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add. I will just say, like, this question has been in my head, and I don't know if it's valid, but like, if this was on purpose and it wasn't removed for the ExMormon Podcasters, it wasn't us that helped them remove it. But if it was on purpose because of the Daily Universe and the Living or LDS Living, they meant to do all of this. Why did they remove it? Like, this was like you guys said, they're like in Africa, they weren't growing and now they are growing because they're trying to be more Christian seeming or like more mainstream Christian. That's what this new introduction is. It's very like it's well formatted to be mainstream Christian. It's easier to take in, like it's easier to understand. It like gets rid of all the history that's kind of messy, the stuff that's Googleable. Like, why did they take it out if it wasn't for us? Like, why remove it? Like these, like it is a $250 billion or plus organization. They own these two things. They own the Book of Mormon app, like all these things. Why remove it? And it doesn't make sense to me, except that they were embarrassed, I guess, that they didn't like how it was being shined on. They didn't like how, I don't know. I just wonder, like, why, if not this, if not us, or if not the ExMormon community, why did they remove that?
And will the LDS Living article go back up as a response to this episode? Will the BYU Daily Universe article be taken down? Will these changes be completely mothballed? Will the people that were behind them get in trouble and lose their jobs? To be seen. Or will we find out that we had nothing to do with any of this? And like I said before, we're just ambitious narcissists, basically taking credit for things that we have nothing to do with.
As of this moment, the LDS Living article is down, but the BYU article is still up.
Still up. All right. Well, that's fun. I'm glad that we get these moments snapshotted for history.
Right.
Really quickly, a couple more comments. Cultural Hall is in the chats. Colch, you do great work. I just donated to Cultural Hall recently because he does such good work. So shout out to Colch and the Cultural Hall. Jeff Kunt says Dan McClellan hasn't been excommunicated. there must be some type of growing acceptance of non-literalism. So that's
no, there's not.
He doesn't
There's
really
definitely
talk
not.
about Mormonism, though.
yeah. He
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning that Julie Diazevedo Hanks recently
Oh
posted
yeah.
on Instagram that she's experiencing increased pressure and harassment from her bishop and stake president. Those are my words, not hers. And that she's having to defend her membership. And so that's another sign of the brethren losing their minds, that they're trying to find a scapegoat for the hemorrhaging that they're experiencing. Can I just go on the record and say, to excommunicate Julie Hanks, it seems like that would be far more devastating than excommunicating me or Jeremy Runnels or Natasha Helfer or Sam Young. Do you guys think that that would be possibly way more devastating, or Nemo, that would be even way more devastating than previous excommunications? What do you guys think?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
most
I think
of
even a lot of active members know her name. Like I think they know who she is.
Mhm.
What were you going to say, Gerardo?
Yeah, most of our followings are members of the
Yeah,
church.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had some popularity within believing members of the church, but then there is a comment here that I'll throw on screen real quick from someone called Millennium saying, Nemo, please get a job. Your extended family would love for you to actually work. So there is some discontent in my extended family about what I currently do for a living, and not everyone's happy about it. But I think Julie Hanks is well loved and liked by a lot of active members. Because her message is the message that the church really should be giving to its members, particularly its female members, and they're not. So they're getting it from Julie Hanks instead. The only reason the church have any reason to be jealous or angry or frustrated that people like her or are listening to her is because they're not providing that. She wouldn't need to exist and do what she does if the church would just treat people better as an institution.
Yeah. Well, if she's getting excommunicated, it's because she's
actually in the comments.
True.
Oh.
If she's getting excommunicated, it's because she's saying true things that the church will soon adopt, but they have to excommunicate her before they adopt her recommendations, right? Just like so many other people. Isn't that the way it works?
Yeah.
Wait, is she in the comments?
Yeah, she's here.
What did she say?
She says, "Hi, I'm all ears." Or my
we
ears
love
are
you.
ringing. Yeah,
We love
my
you,
ears are ringing.
Julie. We hope the church leaves you alone.
Yeah.
Nemo, I don't know if you can agree, but excommunication is not fun.
It sucks.
And it's easy to underappreciate how hard it's going to be. Is that true,
yeah.
Nemo?
I had a lot of bravado going in, and I thought I was prepared, but it doesn't stop it hurting. It doesn't stop it being really difficult. It doesn't stop it being traumatic. So I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I was never gunning for it. I never wanted it to happen, but I thought I was ready for the fact that it probably would, and it still hurt and sucked. So, don't do that to her, please.
I was talking to people over the weekend that are like, I want them to excommunicate Julie because it'll hurt the church. And I don't know. I do think it will hurt the church.
Yeah, but don't put Julie through that.
Don't put Julie through that.
It hurts Julie. But it's the church self-inflicting a wound, right? Like, why would the church want to hurt itself? Like, just stop excommunicating your truth tellers, leave them alone, and then you won't accelerate your demise.
I mean, there's a conversation to be had about what the church views as helping itself and what the church views as a positive escalation of its goals versus what we would see it as. So, for example, what we see is lots of people leaving and resigning and being upset. The church sees people leaving and resigning all the time over so many different issues. They don't necessarily perhaps connect the dots that excommunicating Julie will remove it, or they view it as more important to retain their control than to keep the members that would leave if they excommunicated Julie, for example, right? So it's about them balancing that cost. So for them, they don't see themselves as kicking themselves in the nuts, or however you want to view it. They're not inflicting harm on themselves because ultimately they're upholding the integrity of their institution by keeping their control, by getting rid of the people like Julie who threaten that.
Well, I'm in a large screen myself and say it.
Yes.
Mormon Church, You will rue the day you excommunicated Julie Hanks. You will deeply regret it. I warn you now, back off Julie Hanks. Leave her alone because you will regret that day. You will lose people likely in far more numbers than you ever saw with Sam Young, Natasha, Nemo, Jeremy Runnels, or myself. You heard it here first on Mormon Stories.
Yeah.
But most importantly, just stop punishing your truth tellers and your healers, right? Just stop it.
Yeah.
You're only hurting yourself and the people that are courageously doing what's right.
And I think that the Mormon moron, which I think is Nathan Hinckley, he said it was, says, if they kick Julie out, I'm leaving. And I think that's the sentiment shared by
tens or hundreds of thousands of people will leave the church over that.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, it every time someone, it's like when you know a gay person, right? And you're Mormon, and then you become sympathetic to LGBT people, then there's this ripple effect of all the people that know the LGBT person and loves them who leave. Well, guess what, Mormon Church? It's the same with people who apostatize. The more people who apostatize, the more people who apostatize. It is a domino effect. It's a ripple effect. So when you cause tens of thousands of people to leave by kicking out Julie, you're going to cause even more people to leave. And at that point, the Book of Mormon is going to become a pamphlet, right? You'll have to take out so much of the Book of Mormon, it won't even be a book anymore, because that's what you're going to be doing to yourself.
Yeah. There we are. Much love, Julie. Stick it to him.
We love you, Julie. Thanks so much for the support. I hope they leave you alone. Okay. Just really quickly, just a couple comments. Thanks to Susie. Catherine, she sent us a super chat. Thanks. Thanks for the super chat. Also, Joshua Alexander says, so which Christian church is the true one now? Gerardo, what's the answer? Which Christian church is true?
I don't know. I haven't found it out yet.
Nemo, which Christian church is true? Give him an answer.
Josh, well, I know the Mormon Church isn't claiming to be it anymore. Maybe it's Community of Christ.
Okay.
Shout out Community of Christ. Maybe it's you guys.
Julia, what's the true church?
I don't know. I don't like when people ask that question because I'm just focused on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't like that question.
Right, the guy says, if I've learned anything about the church in my years of being in it, they are never shy about moving the goalposts and acting like they never did. That's wise. Thank you, Rye the guy, for that. Let's see a couple other comments. Sandru says the new introduction doesn't mention the church is trying to pretend he wasn't the founder, at least when people first joined the church. I like that comment. Thank you for the super chat. Apostate Joe Smith says, I give C9s to feed your tape.
Book of Mormon currency.
Yeah.
I love that. Ray Allen says, when do you think the church will for the Book of Abraham?
From the hand of Abraham. They can't. They're stuck.
Joseph Smith made that one. So I don't.
Well, but doesn't that one say by the hand of Abraham? Isn't that one literally on
written by the hand of Abraham upon papyrus?
Yeah, I don't think Joseph. Well, I mean, whatever. Yeah, they can't change
that.
As
we've discussed, I think.
What's interesting? It kind of mimics the title page from the Book of Mormon, and the Book of Mormon's title page is supposed to be a translation of an actual plate. Yeah, I believe.
I mean, I think we've covered before that arch apologist Harold Givens has recommended to the church that they take the Book of Abraham out of its scriptures.
The whole thing.
It's the whole thing because it's yeah.
Wow. I mean, I don't disagree, but that's really interesting.
Alyssa wants to know if this is my victory of Satan beard. Victory for Satan beard. That would make it my Mormon beard. And no, it's not my Mormon beard. It's definitely not a Mormon beard. All right. Thanks everyone for joining today. Julia, Gerardo, Nemo, y'all worked over the weekend to make this episode happen. Can we all give Nemo and Julia and Gerardo a round of applause for your support? Charge me overtime. I'll pay you guys overtime for your weekend hours. Y'all are awesome. Nemo, thanks for joining us. Everybody, please donate to Nemo, the Mormon, and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Subscribe to Analyzing Mormonism. Donate to her as well. or we'll just try to pay her well as she works for us.
Otherwise, I might have to do what my family want and get a real job.
Gerardo, how do people donate to you?
Donate to Mormon Stories. And Mormon Stories pays me for my time.
All right. Also, just a reminder to everyone that the LDS Discussion series, we're 9 episodes in now to LDS Discussions. It starts from the very beginning of the church. It goes in order, analyzing its truth claims as honestly, as dispassionately, and as objectively, as evidence-based as we can. It will change your life if you watch it. As of yesterday, last night, somebody with tears in their eyes thanked me and essentially thanked all of you and Mike in absentia for what LDS Discussions has done to their lives. It's one of the things I'm most proud about in my 20 years doing Mormon Stories. Check it out. You can find it on LDS on Spotify as its own standalone podcast, LDS Discussions, on Apple Podcasts. You can also find a YouTube playlist for LDS Discussions, and it's also integrated into the Mormon Stories YouTube stream. Also, huge thanks to Mike, who's retired. You can check out ldsdiscussions.com for the text-based version of his gift to us. We won't tell you what he's doing now, but he's doing cool work now. Anything else before we end, Nemo?
No, just watch this space. I haven't yet received a response for my appeal to my excommunication. So I appealed it to the First Presidency, so we'll see what they come back and say. But watch this space for that. We'll find out.
Wow.
And get your tickets to Thrive St. George, everyone, because I'm going to be coming to America, and that's exciting.
Nemo's coming to St. George Thrive. I'll be there.
And me
When
and
is
John have
that?
talked about that. That's the end of...
Julio, we should bring you to St. George Thrive.
Yeah. When is that?
Let's get ahead of that. It's like early March, like the first week of March.
Oh, for sure.
Last
for
weekend
sure.
of February, early March. And me and John floated the idea of doing like an evening with John Delin and Nemo. So let us know in the comments if that's something you would like pay to come and see. And we can get a venue and stuff.
Gerardo, why the fetch do you never come to Thrive? What do you have against Thrive? Why are you a Thrive bigot, Gerardo?
I don't have anything against Thrive. We'll come to the next one.
So we'll promise y'all, if y'all donate to Nemo the Mormon, Analyzing Mormonism, Mormon Stories, and sign up for Thrive, we'll karaoke Julia, Gerardo, Nemo, and John will karaoke with you at Thrive St. George. Is that a fair promise? Have you ever karaoke, Julia?
No, and I don't think anyone wants to hear that.
That's not true. That's not true. Anyway, go to ThriveBeyondReligion.com. We get no monetary compensation for Thrive. It's an independent nonprofit that is not a profit thing. But sign up for Thrive. Julia, you can put those in the show notes or in the registration.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for joining us today. Gerardo, any final words?
No, that's all.
Julia?
No, we're good.
No? Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly put a link to Thrive St. George right now in the comments so y'all can register. It sells out really quickly, so I'm sure it'll be sold out. Relatively.
If it's not already. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's why I'm saying we should do a separate event afterwards, John. We should try something.
Yeah, and of course we're gonna have Nemo here to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And we're gonna schedule some sort of meet Nemo, Q&A with Nemo, hug Nemo, give Nemo money, like support Nemo. You don't want hugs, Nemo? Is that it?
All right. We'll have a discussion about personal space later, John.
All right. Look forward to Nemo coming to Salt Lake in a week near you. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Check out LDS Discussions, and we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Thanks, guys. Take care.